Good evening and welcome to the August 15th, 2023 meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. First order of business is to make alternate member Donna Masucci a full voting member tonight. Next, call to order, starting with Mr. Knapp. Here.
Alan present.
Driscoll here. Also like to introduce Vanessa Price, the town planner, and John Huckins, the land use administrative. I'm sorry. The zoning administrator. Had the wrong administrator here.
Yep.
The next item is to review and approve the meetings of August 1st, 2023. The updates, corrections, comments, please. Okay, is there a motion to accept the meetings as published?
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes as published.
All in favor? Starting with here, Mr. Knapp.
I'll abstain since.
All right.
Maybe gonna resume, but I wasn't here to validate.
Okay,
Masucci, aye.
Tessie, aye.
Allard, aye.
Driscoll, aye. Staff updates with the town planner.
Just a couple of things to note this evening. As you see, there's always training opportunities on the office, of planning and developments, the state office. If you've missed any of their webinars, they're great references. The CIP discussion will be held at our September 19th work session meeting. And that will be to rank, the projects will be ranked and then we'll review them and see if the board agrees and we rank them, and then I'll go to the select board for their October meeting, and then it will come back to us for adoption for the second meeting as a public meeting. And just to note, if you hasn't taken the housing survey, I think I included it with your packets, but those of you that may be in the audience or online, you can't really see it, but for those of you that are here, if you would like to take one with you, just if you want to take one to disperse in places that you visit or your places of work, I'd appreciate it. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda is discussion with the board for preliminary conceptual site plan. Sir, Mr. Mike Rudolph would like to discuss this. Please come forward.
When it turns green, then we can hear you for the record. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Rudolph with Remax Shoreline. Thanks for having me tonight. And the reason I'm here is number 73, Second Crown Point Road. Back in 2009, that lot was subdivided off of a larger parcel. There was a 44-acre parcel. So 73 was subdivided at the time. At the time, it had a capped foundation, which is still there. And actually, I think that the septic design showed that as having 3 bedrooms. There's actually 2 bedrooms in that that supply for that property. There was also a barn, a converted barn, that at the time when the subdivision was put together, David Mott presented for a conditional use permit for the barn to become a business. So Doug and Marcia Hatch own the property still. And at this point, what we'd like to run by you is the capped foundation. My understanding is a conditional use permit, once that use is no longer being used, is no longer valid, correct? Somebody would have to resubmit for another conditional use permit. Is that correct? So the conditional
use runs with the land.
Okay, so it runs with the land. So we would like to propose that the barn, the converted barn that was used under a conditional use permit, become the residential component to the property, and that the capped foundation would now become the business or proposed or some future business, because Marcia and Doug are not living there anymore. So I can give you any additional background that you might want on this, but that's kind of the overarching request is for a change of use, just a flipped use for the two buildings on the property.
Any questions?
It's really not changing the property, it's just flipping the buildings.
Yes, the septic is sized right. There's, I think it's really overbuilt. In fact, I think there's a 1,000-gallon tank and leach field that well, actually, there's a common leach field, 3-bedroom leach field. There's a 1,000-gallon tank that services the existing barn, and I think there's a 1,250-gallon tank that services the capped foundation. It's correct. I guess I'd look at it as a berm, if you would.
Well, they lived in it. They have it capped over. They've lived in it for 20 years, maybe. You know, it's just, they never built a house on top.
Oh,
It's
so
all
they lived in the basement
Yeah, the
essentially?
basement's all finished off as a house and a living
okay.
space, and they've lived in it for years. And then they had the barn or the shop thing.
Okay.
Asha had her business upstairs and they used it downstairs like.
You can get a CO for that, huh?
That was before my time.
Gotcha.
My house was that way for a while, before I lived there.
But they meet the minimum requirements as a dwelling unit, so
Sure.
they could have got a CO for it, even though the second floor wasn't done.
The walk-up basements.
Yeah, that's just, yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, town planner, how do we proceed here? Take a vote to support this?
Yeah,
Switch?
if the board is okay with the switch, then we can proceed. If not, he'll have to come in with a formal application, not full application, a minor site plan to,
Wouldn't
the
they have to
changes.
do a formal application?
I would think
anyway,
they
because
would.
you're-
Conceptual review, right, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is,
conceptual review.
right,
So he's just
So, yeah.
asking if he needs to submit a minor
Minor.
site plan,
right.
since he's switching the two,
Okay,
not use, but
He's
from one to
switching the
the
two
other.
buildings, but the use is not gonna change. The
use isn't
lot's still gonna
changing,
be
just the
used
building.
Same way as it was before. So that was, does it need a site approval because it's already existing as both units there?
Why would it?
It's just these swapping buildings. That's kind of like that gray area, like right on the edge,
Yeah, it's a-
because normally it would be, you know, a change of use that they would be coming in because he's not changing the site at all. So, but there's not really a change of use. The use is already existing. He's just flipping buildings.
But the buildings are labeled
right, why would you not
office.
make
and
sure your
building.
plan set is updated to accurately represent what is being conducted on the property? This is how you end up in these pickles where when you start trying to figure out what was done, it doesn't end up being clear.
I mean, I think it was just involved with changing the labels, pretty much.
That's all it would be, yeah.
Yes, I did turn it on.
Hold on. Mine's on. Proud of myself.
The little things.
I gotta celebrate the little, that's all I have. That's all I have.
So just relabeling it is what we need.
Yeah, so do you want him to submit a full application just so you could relabel the two buildings on the site plan? Because the site plan's the same. It ain't gonna change. There's nothing on the site changing.
just as he said, just the labels.
Yeah, I would
Right,
want to
so-
make sure we have something that documents the file that it has been, the
Decided.
use has been flipped, disapproved, like reviewed, the board is in agreement that it is okay. And it is well, just.
That's why he's here tonight, because if the board feels that way, then he would have to make
I
the
think it's better
application.
for him if he gets it
Yeah,
documented. We're okay with it. You probably want to get it signed off, so.
So a minor site plan review.
I would-
Just a question regarding that. So that minor site plan review would be prepared by an engineering company, or what would you?
Dave Mott is no longer in business, so he would have to go to a survey company that probably wouldn't take his plan. They would have to redo this whole plan because he's,
I mean, couldn't you just take this thing and hand mark it up and be done? No? Darn it.
good. Dave Mott does live in Barrington, and I suppose we could contact him and ask him if he has an issue with it, and if he's willing to accept that, then that's his thing, because it's kind of a copyright thing. That's,
Mhm.
you know,
But it'd be on the applicant to ask for that.
right.
Yeah,
right. I don't think that's the board's discretion to tell them how he does it. It's just what
Mhm.
the board provides what we're asking for.
Yeah, my understanding and even calling Dave Mott, I never got a return phone call. I mean, I don't know him apart from, talking to the Hatches about him. So my understanding is he's not working in the field anymore, but I could be
Told
wrong.
me he wasn't. He
Yeah.
was working for a survey company up in Ossipee.
Right.
And I think he just kind of like retired. He lives out on Berry River Road and he's
Mhm.
actually acting as their road agent. That's why I've been dealing with him because of.
Hey, is there a motion from someone?
It's a conceptual thing. So if you guys are saying that you want him to make a
s-
full application with a
Full
new plan,
application for a minor site plan.
you want a new plan showing the labeling, that's,
Mhm.
New plan showing the labeling. Is there a motion?
So if he could get hold of Dave Mott, who would relabel these buildings, we would accept that. Is that what we're saying?
I don't even think Dave Mott has to relabel them. I think he just has to give permission for somebody to amend the labels.
That's correct. So,
On the
because that
drawing.
way it's not, someone else is not taking credit for his work.
Right.
Got it.
when he's not saying this is my work that's done.
Right.
Right.
I don't know if that gets us anywhere.
So what I'm
You
hearing
making a
is that,
motion to that effect?
so what I'm hearing is that they want you to go ahead with the minor site plan review that we had previously discussed, going through that process.
So where we're at with this, so just make sure it's clear.
Mhm.
If you can't get Dave Mott to do this, he has to hire a surveyor and have a whole new plan drawn up.
I would say if you can't get Dave to do this, why don't you come back? Talk about it.
That's a good idea.
We don't want to make this too burdensome. I think it's good for the, protect the board and for you to get it documented. We don't want to be, make a big financial hardship.
Well, I appreciate your guidance. I'll do the best I can to get a hold of him. And do you think you might be able to help?
Yeah, reach
Okay.
out to me out.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next item is item 6A, updating the planning board rules of procedure.
Addressing the board, just the updates that I had made to our existing one, the majority or the reason to update is that the registry of deeds, we've been splitting the cost between the applicants and the town. And they would prefer just to not do that. They're gonna pretty soon not be able to do that at all. So it's changing the way that we're doing our application fees. So when, for example, when a subdivision is ready for recording, we send it to the registry of deeds for them to give us the cost for it to get recorded, and the applicant will directly make the payment out to registry of deeds with the payment. And that was changed from before when it was an additional $50 fee for first page. And the other difference as far as applications, voluntary merger, probably in charge of $25 per application. Previously, the town was, this is up for the board to decide if they want to go through with this, but the town was incurring that cost. Now it's about $17 just to record it and plus staff time. So we figured that $25 was a reasonable amount for an application for that. Also to increase the certified mail fee to $10, so we don't have to keep coming back every time post rates go up. It's comparable to other towns and cities in our area. And I also talked a little about the application for voluntary merger. And the town attorney mentioned that we could probably put it in our subdivision regulations if we, that it's not necessary to put it here. A proposal that I did not put on here, but I want to bring for the board that I missed as far as deadlines. We get a lot of applicants that come in at the very end of the day So I'm proposing a noon deadline on the day that the applications be accepted. That way, if they're missing anything, we have time to review it that day and say, hey, you're missing signatures or you're missing documents, etc. I don't know if there's any comments or anybody has anything else to say. I know that Ron had mentioned previously, talking about for the public, to talk at meetings, to limit it to
Had been on
the
3
time
minutes.
limit. And I think we do already have it in
Says
here.
3 minutes. 'cause I
So we
checked
just
this
have
morning.
to, maybe like reinforce it. Yeah, maybe like what the select board does. I don't know. So
I think we have to get a clock.
like our counter or something. I don't know, a timer maybe.
Time they have left.
Do you guys time people at the select board?
We've had different.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe the town can buy one of them big button things that the chair goes like this every time.
Could do that.
I think we need a countdown. They need to know how much time they have left, so I think some displays the time.
It was like the TikTok, game shows.
The music, don't they do the music?
Not a computer,
unavailable.
but we might be able to have someone that knows about computers could probably.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's a
That'd
good
be
point.
good.
There's an app. That'd be
It's like
good.
work, like semi-professional.
Yes. That's a great
Talking to
idea.
the technical review committee. Still on that, Andy?
The yes. The technology committee? Too many. I'm trying to whittle it down.
Well, don't whittle this down because we're getting smaller and smaller. We appreciate you being here.
It just says 3 minutes, so we can extend that if somebody's.
Yeah.
Like on the Young Road guy, had a big thing, he was representing a lot of different people. So we'd have the option to extend for special circumstances.
I would anticipate so.
Yeah.
If you want it set in stone,
At
you
least
want
give
to put it in
everybody
rules.
maybe
of
3
procedure.
minutes, and they can always come back after everybody's got a chance to do their time.
We're talking just the public comment, not the guy making the application.
Right, yeah, public comment.
Well,
Right,
we had that guy on Young Road, he was representing the whole,
Put your mic on.
he was representing like.
Yeah.
10 people. And he had a whole
It's on
thing
the
that was done
housing
by,
committee,
by
right?
a
Yeah.
attorney, remember that?
Yeah.
That one, we want to give him more than 3 minutes, obviously.
Yeah.
Which you could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, as long as we can do
30
that.
minutes, because he's representing 10 people.
Don't go that far. You're registered in your cool, you know.
Had I known, I wouldn't have.
I just had a question on the certified mail fee. With it being $10 for each applicant, each agent for the applicant, each attorney for the applicant, each abutter, would we be better off just to say accumulated certified mail fees to be paid by the applicant, and then you don't have to like,
Spell out everybody.
and every time something changes, you could just accumulate whatever the total cost is and then give them the bill for that?
I'll have to look at see if the RSA mentions that you have to put that or not, but if not, we can.
Rather just mention the abutter, right, in the regulations. but,
Yeah,
We have to check to see if you have to put a dollar number next.
Just figured that would make it so you don't have to worry about changing it every
Right.
time or something.
if something changes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying, just having it certified mail, the end. Gotcha.
Well, you were
Right.
saying a little bit more than that.
Right, it would be certified mail to be sent to each applicant, each agent, blah, 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 and then as you hit under RSA notice, or and each interested party entitled to notice under New Hampshire law, fee to be paid by applicant. And you could specify, the relationship of the fee to the US Postal Service, to appropriate US Postal Service rates or current US Postal Service rates. So that it would just be whatever the Postal Service is charging for it, for certified mail, it would be covered. Or if you wanted to add it, the US Postal Service plus 1 hour of accumulated municipal labor or something of that sort. I don't know how you've got to $10, but
Oh, I did some checking and a lot of had gone up from 7 to 8 and they started doing 10, but they all seem to cite a particular dollar figure in their rules and
You might
procedures.
have to, that's why I'm saying, I'm not sure if you can.
Yeah.
I'm just, if you can.
Yep.
Phone it in so you don't have to rewrite it every time. You could say it's, 1 hour of municipal labor for the, at town planner rate and
That would be like $50 per butter then,
appro.
or something.
No, I'm saying the total fee would be 1 hour of, or.
Oh,
of
totally. It
labor.
has to be per
Okay.
notifying person or whatever. Is that what you mean?
You could do it, it's all in just how you craft the language to say that here's the associated fee with it, and
Mhm.
the cost. And then you don't have to adjust it every time. Just the suggestion.
Okay.
Are we talking about all these changes?
Not yet. Yes, we will next. And if there's, Mr. Chairman, if,
I was wondering if everyone's done. Do we want a motion to put these as amended? Or do you want to
Well, I have a question.
amend it?
I have a
Oh, go
question.
ahead.
mhm,
On page 3,
mhm.
I see we have the solar regulations.
Oh, we're not there yet.
We're talking.
Oh, we're still
Talking
on
about the
the
rules of procedure.
Rule.
6A,
Never mind.
60. But we're going to that one next.
If you
That's
approve
the gonna be
this, we can
lengthy.
take next step.
I make a motion, we accept these rules as written.
Seconded. Roll call.
Happy.
Masucci, aye.
Jesse, right?
All right.
Wasn't prepared for that because it was
About
wrong
that.
and then Josh.
Yep.
Now it's.
So will all of that be able to be recorded with not every, like, from the standpoint that the recording took place? Cause does everybody have their little mic on green?
I also take notes, so we'll just put unanimous.
I'm just asking.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it would record everybody if you don't have it all on.
I made the decision to go green all the time.
There you go.
All right. Okay, next item is 6B.
As you see, I just did a highlighted memo. There's overall 10 tasks to look at. I guess we can just go through it one by one. That might be the easiest. Course of action, Mr. Chairman?
Pardon?
Up to you.
Oh, yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good. Sorry about my mic here.
That's okay.
Shocked me.
Oh, that's not good. So looking at amending a table of uses, or maybe even the zoning code for special exceptions for some uses. I know the town of Alton does this. Somersworth does it for special exceptions too. I know we don't do that, but that I bring that up because there's some things looking at and doing research for for example, for venue space, Alton allows special exception that way. So just bringing that up, if there's any comment on that.
Well, we have 20 now, 20 feet. I think we now realize that's a problem.
Mhm.
It's probably an issue. I mean, we have size restrictions on buildings. Seems to me having a size restriction on a solar array would be in line with that. You could have KW too, but see, that's relevant from the zoning perspective as much. As panels, as panels get more and more efficient, the same array can give you much more power, more KW. So to me, if we're talking about impact.
Wait, you're not number 3, right?
Okay.
Ron does not want to talk about number 1.
Page number 1.
Page number 1, item number 1. It's very tiny, not very tiny, but there's only a little bit there. And then a discussion if you wanted to put an add to table of uses for congregate care facility.
So looking at the definition of a congregate care facility, what are we trying to accomplish by adding it there? Because when you start looking at congregate care, they're it talks about a transition of a combination of pre-assisted living and then, or assisted living and then long-term care. And when you get into that, I know Tracy Hardikoff specifically talked about that when it was before the zoning board, over the fact that they don't have, they can tell you, come in and tell you the intention is to have this many beds in there, but the state can overrule that and make them up the forced number of beds in that facility. So they could tell you it's a 50-person facility and you could end up with a 150-person facility based on the fact that the state has this allowed push beyond that.
So why would the state do that? Why would they?
Because they need additional
need
beds for aged out folks.
And so they wouldn't approve it without increasing the size.
No, the state, like, we would approve it within our restrictions, but the state could mandate that it hold more.
So the point I think on that is if you go to note 3 in the table of uses, it says
So we're
such facilities may have no more than 15 patient or clinic beds. I don't even know why we have, it's on page 96. I'm not even sure why that's in there, and
Footnotes.
I'm not
table of
sure
Uses.
what purpose it really serves in our regulations.
At this point, I just wanted to see if you wanted to put congregate care facility in. I probably should have put that under the assisted
What
living
page?
portion.
96?
96 on the zoning.
Yeah, because if you, well, it's not, I know she's looking at the congregate care and you kind of changed the
Yeah, that's
subject.
fine.
So,
I'm fine
but
with
anyways,
bouncing around.
if you go to the stuff with this, what was it?
Congregate care is what I'm talking about.
You have the elderly assisted care. So we don't have congregate care listed, but we got elderly assisted care. And that's where it listed the number of bedrooms. And that's the thing Tracy was talking about at the ZBA hearing, because when they came in about the old folks home, well, the retirement type home thing that they were setting up, we listed as, because of that note, as beds. And they were trying to do it as rooms. And that's where Andy come in with, they could put 2 beds in each room. So if we approved 20 rooms, you could end up with
40
you know,
beds.
whatever.
beds.
And because we had it listed as beds, so why do we have it listed as
You know
beds? I
what
guess
the
is the
impact
point.
of that is on the, it's, you have,
Aren't gonna be dry.
but you have, it's not a driving thing. It's a septic system thing. It's an impact of water. It becomes all that expanded component to it.
Isn't it the
And-
most restrictive wins that battle? I mean, like, that's what, in my profession, if the state tells me I can have 40 people, kids, and John comes in and says, according to, Barrington can only have 20, we have to go with whoever is the stricter.
There's some stuff with, New Hampshire's not a home rule state.
Right.
So there's some stuff that the state says, here's what you can do and here's what you can't do. So sometimes the town might have a regulation and the state says that you still can't do it. You gotta follow what their regulation is, because especially when it comes to this stuff now with daycares and elder care and stuff like that, because there's such a need and there's not enough there. The state's starting to get involved to make sure they can expand that, and they don't want towns to restrict it and hold it back. So that's where that most restrictive thing is getting changed because of the state
And-
stepping in and taking their own rights.
And New Hampshire is a parent-child relationship state.
Exactly.
You don't have initiative petitions either. The citizens cannot make laws like in Massachusetts.
But
Right.
if we say rooms or beds, they can still overrule us either way, right? Is that true, John?
It would have to be done at the
Depends
state
on-
level.
Yeah.
So
So
whether we say rooms or beds, they can still overrule us either way, so.
The continuous,
To follow, wouldn't it, our septic requirements? and
oh, the state
water
has the septic requirements.
Right.
the continuing care portion of this proposed thing that we ZBA to go along with, I thought it was a nursing facility because they're nursing people. And if you look at item number footnote 15, you would need no more than 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of upland soil. I thought that was the big impact.
Well, they both are, because
Yeah.
because
I
even
mean,
then.
just
the state-
imagine it.
The
they
state
wanna-
regulates the septic loading. So the
Right.
state says you can put this many people in under this septic loading. I mean, just like we do on houses, and
Yeah.
also when the businesses go in, everything is designed by the state standards for what
Right.
that is, and the state approves it. So this is the one time where the town did something saying, we want something more restrictive, but I'm not sure why they did it. Just like the 8 units per building, we looked through all the stuff in the building codes and the fire code, and there's absolutely nothing in there, and we don't understand why it's even in the regulations. But I mean, but that's part of what all this discussion's about now, about changing the regulations. I'm not trying to confuse anybody, and I know I'm jumping subjects, and Vanessa was trying to stay fixed on that. Mine from the beginning, but it's kind of like, because of how that conversation started, it's kind of leading into its own thing. So I think if we find out what our issues are, then we backtrack and try to go one at a time, like Vanessa is, then we can accomplish something. If you.
If you want, we can discuss that as we go on further, but just some things that to add to the table of uses, this is just kind of coming up from recent meetings or things that have happened, like outdoor dining, for example, community building. We don't have a definition or it's not in the table of uses, community care facility, the congregate care facility, etc. Don't have to make those decisions tonight, but I wanted to bring those up since it's we've had cases come before us that have had those.
My only concern is when you look at congregate care versus assisted care, elderly care, there are some very specific
There are.
guidelines in that. And you're very easily either going to age people out of that, or you're going to end up having, they're going to be like, oh, well, we need an exception for this or an exemption for that. Because, I mean, it even gets into things like incontinence care.
Right.
Does not qualify under a congregate care facility.
And just as a side note too, if we don't have anything in our table of uses, someone can go before the ZBA to ask for relief for that, since we don't have a definition or a
Mhm.
thing for that.
What our regulation says is if it's not specifically allowed, it's disallowed.
Right.
They could go to the ZBA like.
To
she
ask
says,
for
to ask
ask
for
for
that.
relief.
But they have to
Got
go
that.
ask for relief.
Mhm.
And they would
can't
have to have a hardship showing that in order for the ZBA to grant that relief.
Mhm.
It's not just simply we want it. They got to give a reason why.
Mhm. Which I think was the right move, especially in the last case that came up on it. That was
And that was what the issue was. They didn't prove any hardship. And that's the
Right.
reason why it didn't go forward.
where you suddenly have it written in there. Now it's just a right of use based on the zone.
Yeah, and I think that was what the object of this was. There's a lot of people that had input, and because of this whole conversation getting started with, we would like to be able to age in Barrington and stay in Barrington. So the regulations that we have now, people thought were a hindrance to being able to achieve that. That's the reason why this is being discussed now. Is it something that we want to allow? I mean, that's the reason for this.
We do allow it though. Like you can do it. You just have to meet the land use requirements to do it.
So I'm not sure,
Well,
the
like-
congregate care, she wanted to add a definition that then you guys can
And
have it
table
as a
of use.
conditional use or whatever in the table of uses, just so that it's an allowed use that you could address as a planning board level. And what you were just saying earlier is just not put it in there and let them go to the ZBA and ask for it. And then if the ZBA grants it, then you got to still come in front of the planning board. And would you have it as a conditional use if they got it granted from the ZBA?
What I'm saying is we allow assisted living, we allow senior living, we allow elderly living. It just has to fall within the designated areas and in the designated use. The congregate care, I really don't think is largely different than those items, other than the fact that they have like this kind of wider berth of what they allow, but a more restrictive structure around it. And if you actually look at what falls into it, I don't think it's wildly different. Like most of the congregate care services between meal services, leisure activities, transportation, housekeeping can be done in any facility, no matter what it is. I don't think that's, it's like making it like it's an insurmountable issue, and those are in-home healthcare. Anybody can get it at any house. Housekeeping, I have one that comes to my house. Like meal services, I used to have them delivered to my mother-in-law. Leisure activities, are we buying a bus? Like transportation, it's no they're all already all there. I guess that's why I'm like, what are we actually trying to accomplish by doing it, other than we suddenly make our zoning easier for people to come in and make a boatload of money off of the land in our town, which goes against what we're talking about when we talk about housing. My stick.
No, I appreciate it. I've got similar things with other things here, but because we have listed here, we have, as I said, nursing facilities, and then we have assisted living facilities, which requires conditional use in the residential, but it's permitted in others except for HCO, requires a CP like everything else does. And then we have elderly assisted care, which in 5 of these zoning areas requires a conditional use permit, and then it's forbidden in the regional commercial. So somebody could say, well, I'm not an assisted living facility. I'm an elderly care. Who's to decide, you know?
If anything, what I would look at doing is making it a permitted right in the regional commercial.
I don't
Right.
know why it's restricted out of it.
Right. Why would you not want
Specifically
it?
restricted in that RC zone.
Yeah, I don't know why you would not want it there, because that's gonna be your main points of access and your main thoroughfares. That's exactly where you would want that facility to be.
There's a lot of things. I understand these things accumulate over the years and they seem to contradict each other and so
Well,
forth.
that's what we're hoping to kind of
I know, but
shake out a little bit.
it might be a long process,
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
but it's good to do it. Yeah.
Since we're on that subject, should we just go into jump ahead to number 4 to, since we're still talking
Sure.
that same subject, and then we can come back to the utility
Right.
solar. So overall too, not just for, I mean, 4 is in reference to assisted living development, but if we don't have it, like I said, in our table of uses, some things don't have definitions, or if there's changing of definitions.
Yep.
The state strongly recommends that we have all of definitions for all of our current table of
Yep.
uses as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I may have put way too much information, so, but
Person-centered planning.
Does the state have definitions around these?
so the definitions that I got from here are from, it's called the Planner's Dictionary, which is set by the, it's from APA, American Planning Association, but the state planning office refers us to use that, or you use the dictionary. So the reasoning behind using the definitions within the Planner's Dictionary is a lot of these came from cases across the country to help better define what their community needs. So there may be like several different definitions for one thing, and you'll see that like the spaces between it. If there's something that you feel like fits more of the community,
My general sense, if we're gonna do that, you specifically spell out where the definitions come from.
I did on the memo. If you look on the memo on the first page explaining all the zoning amendments we're going to, that we got the APA's, the Planner Dictionary reference.
Right. What I'm saying though is in the regulation to specifically note that, because what'll happen is you'll have somebody that comes before the board and will argue the semantics of a definition saying, no, well, the dictionary says it's this, and we have to be very clear.
Right.
No, this is how we define our definitions.
It's a good point. All of our definitions come from the planning.
Well, not all.
Dictionary.
So basically what it comes down to, if you do not have a definition in your zone, if you have a definition in your zoning, that's the definition that applies. If you do not have a definition in there, then they go to a
And it's
dictionary.
subjective, yeah.
So that's where the thing comes in, and you'd be surprised how many times I'm challenged on a weekly basis because we don't have enough definitions.
Oh,
I'm not at all surprised.
Just- So I guess the point I'm trying to make, it's almost irrelevant where it came from, because if you approve the definition in here, that becomes a definition.
Exactly.
Yeah, whatever the wording we decide on.
Whatever you
becomes the
put in there
wording.
becomes a
Makes
definition.
sense, yep. We don't have to cite some other outside source.
Right.
Get a big demand for pool halls recently.
We don't have a definition for it. It's in here.
What I was thinking about, I think it was up in Conway. They wanted to put a casino, one of these casinos, small casinos for charity purposes, in an old supermarket. And they didn't even want to do a site plan because the guy owned the building. He thought he could just put it in there without even going before the planning board.
It was helicopter.
Yeah, he did. That will intimidate all these little townies.
You know how many people come to me and it says right there, it's a permitted use. I can just do it. I don't have to go to the planning board. No, that's not how it works.
Okay, do we want to continue to go through here? I just had a couple of things. Getting into storage, just the term storage. The only thing we have is self-storage facility, which was added in 2018 at the town meeting. In November, when Joyce and I, and you were there for a while, talked to 4,000 people who were voting,
Mhm.
a lot of the things, not 100, maybe 30, 40, says, one thing we don't want to do is look like Epping with those gigantic bluebird storage facilities overwhelming the town. And now they're building one on Route 9 in Dover, right on the road, right on the edge of the road. Well, John explained how that worked.
That land all went in conservation easement, and the only thing that was out of the easement was where the farmhouse was. So they had to build the thing on the area that wasn't in conservation.
Did it stay in did that recently?
Land still is in conservation, but the house area was exempt from that conservation.
Right.
So when they tore the house down, they could use that spot that wasn't in conservation.
No, there's been a lot of trying to get into work for structural loading.
But they got nobody working there, so don't need the bathroom, right?
You'd be surprised what the rules required. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they do, per square footage of a commercial building.
Yeah, structural
Right.
footings. that need
Oh,
to
I
be-
see. Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about septic load. So my reason for doing this is one of the things we requested to put in some potential zoning changes. I was wanted to remove that from our table of uses.
Self-storage?
Yep.
We have one already on Winkley Pond Road. There's one when you come up from Lee, right before you get into Barrington.
One just before you get to
Two
Rochester.
of them down there, I
One
think.
down there. I
Yeah.
mean, the Bluebird one, I don't think they meet, our height requirements, restrictions wouldn't allow that. So I don't think they,
Well, they make them just wider and shorter, I suppose.
yeah, but I mean, if you're gonna, if
We
you're
got the
looking,
35 feet.
if you're looking at your commercial on 125. I mean, is
It's one
that?
something
is
that
that in-
generates activity,
is that in
jobs
order-
and everything.
Doesn't generate a lot of traffic, you know. The reason I put them up is people need them. So I understand the objection to the Bluebird one, but I mean, like I said, that's a tall building that won't be allowed here. We have,
I know, we've
On
got a couple of
125,
short
we-
ones. We got one across from
so you
John's.
pass the one and leave, but
Josh's
you can't
place,
see
too.
100 yards up the road in Barrington, I mean.
Got one right up the road here.
And the one, the one right
Right
down
here.
here, so you come down from Rochester, you see one there,
Right.
but you can't see another one within another,
Okay,
I mean, I don't see a reason. To me, it's not a valid enough to,
okay. I just
Me,
thought the
that's
limited
not-
area we have in
Believe it or
regional
not.
commercial, we might want restaurants or something other than that. And,
I'm not thinking we should be so picky.
well, I don't care if this guy's, it's taxed
If
$2
you wanna
million
talk about-
and $2 million is worth 3 cents on the tax rate.
If you want to talk about the self-storage issue, I have an issue when you call a mixed-use development and your commercial use on the bottom and self-storage is listed as a commercial use. So you could put a garage on the first floor, you can put a whole bunch of residents above, call it a mixed-use structure. You now get 8 or 10 units where you could only get one house and the garage underneath could be rented by the person living above it. And
Yeah.
that's in our regulations now.
Yeah, I question whether the mixed use is achieving anything close to the objective it's supposed to achieve.
I think we need to look at what the commercial thing is, maybe change the definition a little bit, just say these are the things that should be allowed as
Well-
part of the mixed use.
Yeah, well, I guess I can't use a name, but there's one not far from where the town entertainment is taking place. And they have to put 10 units in their building if they build it, right? Dove?
I believe there's one a lot closer.
Well, there is one closer and they get 8, but that was sold as one person was gonna take all 8 units.
I mean, those are basically garages. I mean, they're gonna be sold as, gonna rent it out to guys who won't have storage. Or they're gonna have, over there, but they have an extra vehicle or a boat or something. That's what's gonna happen.
What's the office size in those? It's small, like 400 square feet or something?
He just modified it. He's merging like three of the units together and he's putting one office in for his own company because they do their own engineering, designing and everything else.
Mhm.
So, but they're still keeping the entrances and stuff so they can be broken into separate units
Oh,
to
okay.
comply with the approval that was here, but it changed the fire separation loading because of the size of it. So he had to make some adjustments on that because of that. The fire separation, because of the size of the building, because it's a wood frame construction. It's irrelevant to what the planning board stuff does. It's just something that has to do with the
Sure, okay.
construction. portion.
It's just good for us to understand it from a regulation standpoint. It's nothing to do with an actual approved permit. It's how is our regulation structure is really.
Well, I think it's, and I don't know if it's even definitions to me. I mean, if the mixed use concept even valid these days, I mean, you know, bricks and mortar places don't, everyone shops on Amazon online. Nobody shops on, you know, commercial buildings, the small town concept of, you know, I'm gonna revitalize downtown. I'm gonna have a mixed use, I'm gonna have, you know, shops and stuff that'll drive people downtown. That's a vision everybody has, but it never happens these days with, you know, brick and mortar stores don't happen anymore. I mean, Daniel Webster's out of business, the coffee shop went out of business. You know, the concept that you can drive, when right down the road, we have Market Basket, we have that thing and the developing behind the gas station there, to think we can revitalize downtown with mixed use and all that kind of stuff. I think I question whether that's even a reasonable goal.
Well, the whole.
Town center, mixed
Sounds,
use.
so that's that whole thing we tried to do with the PUD. We thought we could accomplish that through the PUD thing. But we've actually had almost nothing because of the restrictions of the PUD. But mixed use is allowed, so people are doing the mixed use, but they're not doing the PUD. And was contrary to try to create that downtown that we were trying to achieve when that got started.
That's coming up on 2 years too, right?
So,
I don't think mixed use is working, my point. I don't think it's working.
Dove?
oh,
I don't think it-
but I'm just saying, when you did that, Thibodeau did a
don't think
PUD.
it can
I mean,
reach-
be back.
mixed use. I mean, multiple people are
I think
doing mixed use.
people-
Those are what people
I
come
don't think
forward,
it's-
but they're not
A viable
coming
concept
forward with the
in
PUD.
today's online environment.
Just so, we can kind of,
Going for your-
yeah, if we can
Like,
get
where do you
back,
guys
if we
wanna
can get back
go
to the
from
building
here?
and get back
You.
on subject, or else we're gonna accomplish absolutely nothing tonight.
Yeah.
Well, I'd go through a couple of the definitions here. For example, we have storage area, an area used intended for storage of materials, refuse, or vehicles and equipment not in service, in other words, junk cars. So that's one of our definitions. Then we have bulk storage, which can be who knows what, piles of dirt and so forth. Storage of sand, gravel, vegetation.
What are you looking at? Which one?
Page 14.
Page 14, storage definitions. The first one, they can put trash in there in vehicles not in service, which means unregistered vehicles or waiting to be junked. And then we finally have storage, outdoor storage on page 15, item number C. Junk and scrap storage is one thing that we're inviting by this definition. Storage of used products, scrap such as wood, cloth, paper, grass, metal, plastic.
But the
You know-
state's definition is someone's doing that and they haven't come to the planning board to get an approval for a junkyard license. They're actually in violation of running an illegal junkyard. I write people up on a regular basis on this one.
Maybe we shouldn't just put the definitions in because it might just encourage people to do this. I don't know. It's up to the board, but.
Oh, but taking it out, wouldn't that be worse, John?
The storage definitions, we don't have any definitions for it.
Well, we could,
But
we could clean
They're
up the
new
definitions.
definitions.
Is this proposed language or existing language?
That,
There is
page
no-
14 is item number 6, new definitions.
Yeah, these are all new.
Okay.
We
So
could
maybe
clean up the
more than you're
definitions,
asking for,
because
but when
these-
you said storage definitions,
Yeah.
there's.
This
a
is from the
plethora of
Planners Dictionary, right?
Mhm.
So maybe we can clean up the language for our benefit. Not suggest that we want to take refuge or junk cars.
Or you don't have to take all of them or any of them or.
Yeah,
But aren't you defining that that is storage that has to be approved? So you don't have to, just because
Right.
you're defining it as
Right.
storage, you don't have to approve it. You're not saying you can do it, John. It's just saying that is. you're
That's what
including
is
that-
storage.
Including that as part of the definition. of
I
storage.
understand.
I think leaving it out of there is more exposure by saying, well, it's not storage, your rules don't say that. So,
And that's what you said, right, John?
Right now, it's like, Landry's had an existing junkyard, so they're able to keep going. If someone wanted to come in and had a junkyard, which means anything that's not being able to be used for its original intended purpose is considered junk by the definition in the state statutes.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have
So-
junk.
So what happens is if someone has a bunch of stuff in their yard that can't be used for its original intended use, it has more than 2 cars total that aren't registered. Other than there's a little caveat, if there's more than 20 years old, you're allowed to have up to 5 vehicles as long as they're buffered from site and it's not considered a junkyard. But that whole junkyard definition is, if you go to our definitions for junkyards, it references that RSA that I use when I write people up for junkyards.
Is that 112 or something? like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
so what are you saying, John? That you think you'd rather go with that than have it defined?
Well, I'll ask John if
Right now, that
in the
junkyard,
definitions, if it says an area used or intended for storage of refuse, vehicles and equipment not in service.
Which one do you like better? This one or the one you're dealing with now?
the one that I deal with now, because the way the RSA is written, it's black and white and clear, so
course.
I have to take someone to court. It's, here's the state definition, because it's in the RSA that this is on a junkyard, and if you don't have, because it clearly states it as a junkyard, so I could write them up as a junkyard. This thing, this almost says, this is a storage area, it's not a junkyard, but yes, it is a junkyard
Yeah.
by that other definition.
It would
So
kind of spread out
So
the
if you call it a
definition,
storage area, that's like, no, this is not a
John's
junkyard, this is
didn't
my
work.
storage area.
because we don't have a lot of junkyards, so.
I,
Just my.
you know how people are gonna, yeah, I know I'm right. No, I don't think it's a good idea, but
So we can go through a few of these where it's
No,
similar.
I'm just asked to do them.
Storage bulk, storage commercial, storage, that one's not bad. There's another one here that just general outdoor storage, which kind of allows
That's what you're.
this much,
Is it- or
including
is-
junk, scrap storage, storage of used products, scrap materials like piles of wood, cloth, paper, glass. This is outdoors. Piles,
Yeah.
not in a building.
but meets the definition of junkyard in the state's RSA.
I know, so why do we have it here?
I would fix it and just refer to the junkyard definition.
Okay, that's my motion.
Which we already have in our regulations.
Nix all storage definition.
Offered, okay.
The whole
How's that?
thing?
Nothing, nothing good there.
The outdoor storage in total or something else, John? What do you?
Well, we were talked about storage areas with the refuge vehicles not in service. I think we agreed.
No, I'm just asking, you want to nix everything under storage definitions or just
Yes.
storage outdoor, everything,
Huh.
the whole enchilada?
Let's start and talk about it later.
Well,
What we
I-
want to allow, but John's system seems to work.
Well, I mean, I'm
It's
just.
not my system, it's what's already. in
No,
place.
no, but I think-
John, I just want to make sure I know what you're proposing. You sold me, just make it, tell me what you're selling me.
I'm selling you.
I'm sure I know what I'm buying here.
Outdoor storage, no storage commercial. That sounds rather benign, I guess. Storage of goods and materials for sale in a business located on the premises.
Well, let me ask a question.
Could that be in the premises or on the premises?
When I read the storage of goods or materials for sale in a business located on the premises in the yard. And if you have a person who's selling car parts for their commercial business, suddenly now the storage of goods and materials for sale in a business located on the premise.
You're gonna have
Now
a
we've got a whole bunch of cars being taken apart.
pile of
Exactly.
fenders and
Now you
everything.
have it- Now you have that, so
So you elect that one goes too, okay.
yeah,
So we got 1, 2,
No
3,
storage definition.
4.
I got
All
it.
4
No.
definitions.
All four gone. Look them all.
Sorry, I'm such a pain in the,
It's okay, I'm not gonna look at it again. Fine.
No, John, we're gonna cut
Here
this
for-
progress. Don't say sorry.
When I think about that.
This is our progress
Just
tonight.
give me a hard time, guys. Give me a hard time.
And they would. Oh, yeah.
Now, the next one, restaurant outdoor customer dining, I really love that one.
Once you vote on, when we vote on storage,
We don't have to vote, do we?
No, just tell me what you, so tonight we're just talking
Informal.
about what we should go moving forward and at our next meeting,
I think we're all in favor of leaving
got
it as John.
we gotta keep going. I have a lot for you.
Discussion after this one, I guess. And then-
I mean, minor changes, elderly housing probably should be capital E, bowling should probably be capital B.
We haven't gotten into sheds yet, so.
Oh, we already passed it. We're already S's. I don't want to go back to the B's and E's.
You starting at the beginning of the definitions?
We're
'cause
all
in the
over the
middle of
place.
it?
We're all, yeah, let's go back. That was my fault.
I'm gonna make the suggestion
We don't
again.
wanna be
Let's go back to page 1, because we never addressed the
So
stuff.
fun. Okay,
I mean,
so
I'm with
where
you.
did we
we're
leave
not- We're
off?
not addressing it.
At
we're
least
just
Vanessa
talking about
is
this, we're not
on
gonna get
target
anything
here,
done.
so.
Okay, so we are scratching number 1. We're not doing special exceptions for uses. Add the table of uses. It sounds like no for congregate care facility. There was other proposed for art gallery. And that's because we don't have a definition for, I think what's arts and crafts establishment. Anyways, we can get through that later.
Okay.
Add the table of uses outdoor dining, community building, community care facility. And then
Cameras outdoor, oh, okay, right.
that
Yeah, I
will
see.
fall under the new definitions as well, if those are things that
Okay.
that you want to consider.
So under community care facilities, can you put instead of daycare, daycare, childcare is the proper, language now?
Yeah.
Page
Community care
15 at the very bottom.
We're on page 1.
Okay, well, I'm.
Oh, same page,
This now.
So community, you said made a comment about community care.
You thought I was bad.
On our table of uses, it's listed as a child daycare agency. That's how our table of uses is
15
listed.
at the very bottom, it says a daycare.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that what our table of uses say and the
Community care?
definitions say
can't
should
find
be
it.
the same thing.
Community care.
You shouldn't have one listed as a use and then have a
Don't say
definition
anything
that
about
doesn't fit
childcare.
Right.
what, it's not the same thing as what's on the table.
So is it daycare because it's all?
Daycare's in definitions.
Oh, inside of it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It says,
Um,
resident care.
Oh, yeah,
daycare, Home finding service
for children.
Adults. So the daycare
Is the
is,
incorrect
is, it should be just childcare.
childcare.
We don't take care of the day, we take care of the children.
And then should it say child and adult care?
And it doesn't.
We
and
have
it's-
existing, yeah,
Yeah,
because existing, we have child daycare agency.
Why don't we just take out the day, just say care,
yeah, it's.
contribution. to the
Wait,
family.
hold on.
Is that redundant?
Done, done.
It might be.
State.
I didn't write these, so. it could be wrong.
Because later on it says children and adults. Fine.
So community care facility could also be like a senior center
Yeah,
or.
that's true.
We're just taking out the daycare. We're putting it-
Right.
Just saying care instead of daycare.
Put
We
care.
have this in the existing
No,
child daycare
say
agency.
childcare,
Well,
because then it's home finding
well,
services.
Children and adults right after that.
Yeah, but that's a different thing.
Is it?
Yeah, you get childcare and then you get home finding services for children, adults,
Oh, I see
or
what you're saying.
children and adults.
I got you. You're right. You're right.
So that would be a homeless shelter.
So it should say,
Should say childcare. Should say
so
adult,
is
yeah.
adult care still allowed? Not still allowed.
All right, we're not killing tonight, John.
No, it did it 27 minutes last meeting.
Right, yeah.
That was a public hearing too.
Public keeps us online. Keeps us in line.
27 minutes. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I think so.
Can we go back to page 1?
Yeah. So it sounds like community care facility is, well, that makes sense, Donna, because we're talking about the table of use and the definition with it.
Right.
So, that sounds like that's something that everybody's
Yeah. that sounds
in
right.
general supportive of putting on it. Okay.
Okay.
Community building, any,
So what page are we on?
I guess it'd be
One. Yeah.
one.
I know, but.
Well, it's, you gotta reference it back. It's referencing.
Sorry, Donna, it's all my fault.
Since I guess community building is actually community center, which would be this definition on page 15, but
Why is community center better?
yes, community center instead
Because
of
it
building.
matches the definition on page.
But matches the
15.
definition.
Okay.
So the outdoor dining would be like restaurant, outdoor customer dining area. Those all sound like that's something the board would like to pursue to add to the table of uses and definitions.
Yep,
Okay.
and the community care facility definition.
Yes.
I think we're finally getting to solar.
Okay, now we're on solar. Okay.
I'm done, so.
So,
I don't even care anymore.
and looking at, like we were gonna, change 21.3.1 from 20 feet to 35 feet, but in researching other communities, they did kilowatt and it's, and a lot of other references to the solar were on kilowatts, not necessarily like heights or not heights, height, yes, height, kilowatts instead of height.
I mean, I
So I don't know.
The ones below from Rochester, I think are better.
Right, so then, and they, just as to note, Rochester and Durham both just adopted solar.
But the ones you show
Ordinances,
from
but-
Rochester, they don't talk about kilowatts. These ones right down here from Rochester, there's no kilowatts in those.
Oh, that's for the solar collection systems. I just want to discuss because we didn't have that in our solar ordinance, I believe. So I don't know if that's something that you wanted to consider, like what you like to borrow from other communities that.
Well,
Has they done it? I don't know.
We have solar system and they call it solar collection. Is that the
Mhm.
only difference?
I believe so.
So they just call it differently, but the language I think is good.
Hmm.
I think that making sure they have a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, I think that's good. Putting something on a really, really small lot, I think is not appropriate.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's for freestanding, so they can still do their roof mount solar
Yeah.
on even a smaller
Yeah.
lot.
But I do have a little bit of an issue with I like the second one, but letting it go 10 inches over the roof peak, I think is a bad idea. Not only because it's above the roof height, but the wind catches it and makes it
Mm.
much more susceptible to being pulled off.
Hmm.
So having it go over the edge of the roof peak, from the engineering perspective, is a bad idea.
Yeah.
It should
You
be,
could just like strike by more than 10.
say, 1
inches.
foot below the peak. I mean, you shouldn't be allowed to go above the peak.
Well,
Way above the peak. This says it's 10 feet. That's right. It just says that it can't exceed the height of the zoning district. So we got a 35-foot height zoning thing that for maximum height. They're saying that they can't exceed that.
So what they're saying is if you have a roof that comes up and is at 35 feet, your solar array can't come up and be 10 inches above that.
More than 10 inches,
More
so,
than 10 inches above that 35.
so then it'd be 45,
No, 35, 10.
yeah.
I'm saying anything over the peak is a bad idea.
It's not saying over the peak.
If you can go 10 inches for peak roofs, so if I can do a peak roof at 35, and I go 10 inches over that for my solar, that means I can go 10 inches over 35.
right.
Yeah, but our maximum height is, if you read our definition, it has to do with you average your high spot and your low spot for doing your height, if you go into zoning, where it has that definition on what the height is.
Yeah, but John, if you read this, it says if I'm allowed 35 feet, I can go 10 inches over that for my solar array on my roof. And all I'm saying is that's a bad idea. Allowing it to go 10 inches over the top of the peak is a bad idea. You're gonna have systems in high winds, you're gonna have them pulled off the roof.
So you want to get rid of that,
The more than
bullet
10
point?
inches.
I don't want them to go over the peak, yeah.
Just get rid of that.
Yeah.
And then it would
Or-
default to whatever
You go
the,
by what the fire code is on a pitched roof, you gotta leave that 18 inches down from the top for a ladder hook to go on it anyways.
But why are they saying go 10 inches above the peak?
Like I says, it doesn't say above the peak. It says above the maximum height allowed in that district.
Imagine firefighters up there on that slippery roof on those solar panels trying to.
Well, that's why it's supposed to be from the other side. The solar panels are there. It depends on where there's a whole, it's not black and white when you read the code. But you gotta have that along the top. So if they throw a ladder hook over, they.
The
can go
hook
up.
will have enough room.
Right, so it goes over without being into the solar panels. Then you got the walking sides coming up.
I was
But
thinking
if you
of a
put it
shed
all on
roof
one
in the
side,
back,
and you got
just-
the other side open that's accessible to a fireman, then you don't have to do any of that. I mean, it's, yeah.
My point is, this seems to conflict with that, John. Why would we have regulations here that conflict with that? And why would we have language here that seems to allow you to go over the peak by 10 inches? When the fire code doesn't allow you to do that, and you shouldn't do that from the engineering perspective. I mean, you read that, John, it says I can go 10 inches above the peak,
Rochester recall.
and that's how I read it. I mean, does anybody else read any other way?
Hate it. Really. You know, I agree with you. I'm like, why complicate it by putting that passage in there, that 10 inches, and then you have somebody who's gonna argue.
Why don't you just take that whole paragraph right
Yeah,
out, even
just
that
take
one
it out.
5 on the.
Building or roof mounted, blah, blah, blah.
Well, we still gotta limit the height, right? So,
Building or roof.
No, just that.
Why would you
just
put
that
it
bullet
on
point.
a- just don't even mention it. They gotta put it on their roof, because the fire code that has that thing about that 18 inches along the top is in place anyway, so you can't run it up over your ridge, because you gotta leave that ridge open for accessibility for the firemen.
I'm okay changing the language, but I think we need to have maximum height someplace, and I think that's the clause of maximum height.
Yeah, but the maximum height
Yeah,
you
allowed
want
in the
is
zoning
for
district.
standalone.
You want the
And
pole
this
on
is
the ground,
referring
that's
to-
on roof.
That's roof mounted.
This is freestanding or ground mounted
Oh,
for a solar collection.
yeah.
I guess the
Well-
second one is ground mounted, I guess you're right. So for that one, roof, she's just saying, take it out. And so the building code will go to the building, you say you gotta be 18 inches below that for code purposes, John?
That's what it says there, unless it's a roof where you have access from another side. They got nothing's. NFPA 1 is the same thing as the building code. You gotta read 6 portions in order to get one answer.
Right.
All right, so you just strike the whole thing.
Yep, take that one out.
I'm
Yeah,
there.
because
The entire thing.
the whole next
Just
section,
that bullet point. Building or roof mounted.
the whole bottom section where it references 5 feet for systems mounted on flat roofs. That would be as a person who has a mounted solar array, the pitch on that would be so massive, you'd never do it.
5 feet?
Yeah.
You do 5, I've done 5 feet.
On a flat roof?
Yeah.
Huskaka.
Wait a minute.
did-
look up
did-
that
I've done 5 feet,
definition.
I've done 5 feet with a balanced system.
Yeah,
I
the
think
balance
this-
is that you would,
This is designed for someone that has a flat roof and they're gonna have, let's say, a ground mount thing. Where you got one, then another one, then another one, then another one. They don't want the max to be over 5 feet.
Right.
Because they're stacking a whole bunch of solar up on a flat roof. That's what this is talking
Right, but
about.
they wanna get the angle, they wanna get the.
But they gotta get the angle.
Yeah,
They're
they gotta
trying to get as
get the
close to
angle.
45 as possible to get the maximum return.
You get them spaced out so far, your range of radiant reflection would actually be cut off by going 5 feet up. You lose so much in gain off of it, you'd never.
But really, it doesn't matter because we've already Xed this paragraph
Yep.
out, so we should move
Move
on.
on. Okay,
So to go back to that maximum height for the ground mount ones.
Yep.
So I know Ron keeps saying he wants a maximum height. You gonna put a number in that?
No, it's already in
Yeah,
here.
John, it's
in.
it says, the third one is there. It
Height
says,
restrictions for zoning district.
no, the third one, the one we just Xed out, the one below that, John. The last one.
Ground and
the
pole
last one.
mounted collector shall not exceed height restrictions for the zoning district.
flip back.
Right, but it doesn't give a height.
Yeah,
Whatever the zoning district.
Whatever the zoning is, maximum zoning.
Oh, okay.
Restrictions in the zoning district.
So I'm okay with that, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
We're gonna do away with that 20 and 30 arbitrary numbers. Okay,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Can we just go back to the A for that? Do you want it still to be 35 feet? So like it says, a tracking ground mounted residential solar system should not exceed 35 feet. In other communities, they did kilowatts. Sorry, go back up before we
Yeah, I
get
know,
too
I'm
far.
saying, the one down here supersedes that, we'll replace that. Vanessa.
So you want to take out this whole,
No, I want to take out that sentence and replace it with the one we just talked about. So
You'll take
not catch,
21.3.1. You want to take the whole thing out?
this sentence right here, tracking, take it out,
okay.
and then this will replace it right here.
Start with
Oh,
tracking.
I see what you're saying.
You're not gonna
Okay.
limit the size of what happens is that
The-
the pole mount system,
You're starting
If
with
you
eight,
don't limit
that
the
line
size of
starting with
the
eight
array,
tracking.
all of a sudden you could have one of them, the rays will get bigger and bigger and bigger instead of having, that. It's like that 10,001 that, Barry did. That was the 35 feet. Those are the typical commercial ones you see.
Mhm.
If you don't limit the size of them, for the kilowatts, what if they decide I'm gonna take a pole, I'm gonna put a 20 kilowatt in there?
The only problem you run into there is if you look at PV systems, the panels are actually getting better and more efficient as they go, so you can have a much smaller footprint and get way more KW out of it.
Especially on these pole mounts, because you're getting the reflection from the backside. So the same panel that used to put out 37 is now putting out like,
Well,
Nice.
400.
Even good efficiency right now, John, is only like 20%.
I know, but
A lot
the,
of room to improve.
but the same size panel that used to put out like 3 kilowatt, 3.5 kilowatts is now doing like a little over 4 because they're getting the reflection on the
I thought you
backside.
just meant that.
What is, why we,
Couldn't get a
Oh,
response.
it seems to me that, having localized power generation.
Yeah, because the other was referring to
is not a bad thing.
greening.
Why
No,
would
you
we-
want to encourage it, and actually the,
And that's
State
on
RSA,
ground mounted, so.
if
that's
you
good.
go to 674.21, I think it's A. It talks about encouraging that alternative energy and the whole bit as part of your stuff in your
So
regular.
why would we limit it by, my question is, why,
God,
given that, why would we limit the KW? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. why
It
we
doesn't
would.
make sense because that would depend upon the
I
manufacturer.
don't,
how
like, could
much
be
you wanna
make
pay
them
for them,
more
right?
efficient.
Especially as to get, making it more efficient.
Yeah,
But there are limits, there are sizing limits already that they're allowed to tie into the grid. Like you can only go so big on a PV system. Like we put solar on one of our buildings. I couldn't go any larger. The only reason I could put as much on as I did is I have 2 incoming services. Because it is size restricted already through Eversource.
Yeah, because they don't want wires going backwards.
Well, it does
It's
feedback,
bidirectional.
it does feedback already. It has, yeah. It has to do with the net metering. It has to do with the whole net metering thing.
Right.
They worry about which way it flows and how much is being generated, in
Right.
certain areas, all that kind of stuff.
If you look at.
They,
solar as a
yeah,
whole
because they can
anyway,
only take what they can
actually-
use, right?
Well, they have
It's
meters in there.
currently structured as a
Panels and-
plus.
So-
I'm so confused, I'm sorry.
So just to keep
You
things
told me to,
going.
you
we're
told
gonna-
me to take that out, but then now we're not taking it
So
out.
just take that whole section right out, even the part from Rochester, don't even restrict it on the size, I think is what they're saying.
But then he was going back up to this one now.
Oh, yeah, but he was saying, do away with this whole thing completely. Just keep this, that bottom line at the bottom of the page.
Yep.
And then, and I think everybody was like, why regulate the size of the system when you have your height in your zoning area regulate? your height?
Yeah. So the red where it says KW, we're not gonna do any KW restrictions.
And you're taking out all the black above it too, that we have in our regulations now.
All ground mounted systems located in the front yard shall be reasonably screened. You're taking that one out?
I don't think we'd take that out.
I was wondering, you said the whole thing for.
Well, that's what Ron had said. We don't need any of that, but
No, I was just saying that one sentence where it says, a tracking
Tracking.
system. I was taking that. That's
You're just taking one sentence
That
out,
one
of tracking
sentence.
ground
A
mounted.
tracking ground mounted residential shall not exceed 20 feet. Taking that out is what I was taking.
So
out.
someone came
Not the whole-
up
not the whole paragraph.
System for
Because that's being
residential.
replaced with the thing down here, John. So that one sentence is being replaced by down here.
That the zoning district decides how big it can be. That's what he's replacing it with, down below. Am I right?
Well, yeah, so
Yeah.
you can
Right.
you can go as big as a
35 feet, for example, right?
I think it's different in different zones, but yeah.
Yeah.
Got that, John? You got,
You got it.
I see what it
You can
says.
explain it to me tomorrow. Like,
I see
that's fine.
what it
I don't
says.
know why
You'd
not.
rather put
Yeah.
a specific feet in?
That's almost something that would get regulated like as a commercial thing, as a site review thing. Because
Yeah,
if you do them as a residential one where they come in and they're just allowed to put them up, am I supposed to say, okay, if you're putting it in your front yard, what are you gonna get for screening and, and is that just for your ground mounted?
I think the original concept was permit by rule for residential, then conditional use for commercial. Right? That's where we were. right?
Yeah, but the residential stuff is allowed straight up without going for site review right now.
Yeah, but you gotta have, we gotta have screening, I guess. We still want screening, don't
If
we,
there's a-
John? So I think that's a.
Well,
that's
you
a
got
you
the one
decision.
on Beauty Hill Road, where you got that pole mount thing up there, right? So
No, it's
because you want that screen, and then how you gonna screen it? How big a fence is gonna hide that? You know,
Right.
a 40-foot high fence? I mean, you can write what you want in here, but how do you apply it? That's,
Well, reasonably screened, I guess tracking, whenever.
Yeah, then you
We're
get
never
into
gonna-
ground mounted.
we're never gonna tra-
TVs
never gonna screen
and
this.
pole mounted.
Exactly.
Well,
They
that's the
talk
point.
about
I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
Take it out.
So,
I think you want screening. You want some screening if you can reasonably do it. But on tracking, you're never gonna screen tracking one.
well, what are you looking, why are you taking the height off of it? Because now you could have a tracking system that's 35 feet tall, because that's the limit of the
Zoning.
zoning.
Well, because you missed the last meeting, but Chris Berry came in and he was doing a system and his was like 31 and a half. And it was a pretty typical system, he said. So 20 feet, what he said, and I kind of
Was
agree, 20 feet's not
inadequate.
enough.
Or no,
There's no
no.
way you can do 20.
that's the way they tip to follow the angle.
But why are
Look
we
at the one on
taking
Beauty
it?
Hill, that's not 20. There's no way that's 20.
No, that's
No.
probably that 30 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a.
Yeah,
That's a
but
big
I guess the point is, how do you
20 something.
screen that?
So it's gotta be 30 something.
So we're not
Our zone is
addressing
35.
I
tracking
thought
now.
when they were talking about that, it was regular PV panels on
The ground mount things, yeah. No,
Not
that makes
pole
sense.
mounted.
When,
Just-
in a
yeah.
commercial application where you're doing a solar field, they want that so it's screened. I get that, but that's
Okay.
not what this says.
This is
Okay,
the
we-
residential.
We should refine that to say what you think it is, and I think it is.
So when
Not a ground mounted
But see,
system.
then you're coming for your site review for a commercial thing, and you guys could dictate that as part of your regulations, so I can see why you would have it in the regulations.
But
And
this
nobody
is for
do it.
residential.
Yeah.
why don't we,
Oh, that's the point. How do
why
you-
don't, what about, why don't we make that ground mounted only? And then restrict the tracking systems with the last paragraph. So we have two separate sections. One, the one that has the screening requirements is for the ground mounted. And then we have a separate section for the pole mounted or tracking system. And that has the height restriction.
Which is the zoning district,
Would,
height restrictions for the zoning district for a tracker.
right now, the John point is, we talk about a fixed mounted. If we take out the tracking,
Right.
I think that fixes the problem. It eliminates the screening requirement for that, John. And we'll make a new section for the tracking using that language down here. You know what
For
I
a
mean?
tracking
So,
system.
I'm playing devil's advocate
Yeah.
here. So if we're trying to promote solar.
Yeah.
You can have this great big pole up in the air that everybody could look at, but something low on the ground, you got to screen.
That's where I'm at. I think it's ridiculous.
You don't want screening for anything?
What purpose does, if you're gonna allow this great big pole up in the air where everybody can see it, they put something down
Don't
low
look
and you
up.
want them to put a fence around it so no one sees it, it kind of makes no sense to me.
That's probably a good point.
You got a good point there.
So let's get back to the length.
I think originally the screening stuff that was all brought up had to do with a commercial solar farm, not for residential use of solar.
Mhm.
But even
Those
though
are
it's
two
in the
different
residential-
things.
Even though it's in the residential.
I know, but I
Yeah.
mean, why, we don't. have to
Why
keep it
was
in
there? Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay,
So
I think-
Why would you not just say a tracking ground solar system? Shall be required, shall be a conditional approved item. And just make it.
Because 1 and 2 families are exempt from site review, so you're asking them to come in for site review for a residential home having solar at. So that means every single solar house would have to come in for site review.
Only people in a tracking mounted system. I don't care if you put a roof mounted system, you put ground mounted panels, all that's fine. It's just the concern about somebody plopping a pole in there with a giant array of panels on it that's flipping around.
You know, we can check with legal to see if you could do that even on a single family home. I'm not sure you can, but we can check. Because it's not a commercial solar if they're using it for the house.
What I look at there is that when we think about how zoning is applied, what are we trying to make our town look like? Don't think that fit what we're trying to accomplish where you drive.
But I'm seeing more and more of the pole mounts for residential uses.
I guess
And-
that
and
roof
it's-
mounted, I think a roof mount is the most, by far, the most common.
It's the most common, but I'm seeing more and more of the pole mounts because of the efficiency, because of the reflection.
Because you
of the
notice them more.
They're able to use like 50% less panels and get the same kilowatt rating. But then you got the cost of the pole mount, so that makes it go up. But, so it's still more cost effective to put it on your roof. But then again, if your roof is 10 or 12 years old, then they're recommending that you redo your roof, then all of a sudden it's more cost effective to go with the ground mount.
Yeah, but if you,
That's all the stuff I'm seeing.
if you
with
do the
people
roof
in
as
front
part
of
of
us.
a solar, you can count that as a tax deduction. That's included in your tax credit.
Only if you do half the roof. If you do the whole roof, it's considered, um,
Cosmetic.
yeah, a capital improvement. You gotta depreciate it. If you do half the roof, it's called maintenance.
I mean, where do we have pole mounted in Barrington? I know the one on top of Beauty Hill. I don't know. what the name
Coachman.
is. Which one?
There's probably 8 or 10 of them in town, but most of them are in the backyard, so you don't see them.
Right.
Coachman's in the front yard.
What's that?
Mosier's property.
Oh, Moshes is on the lake. That's right on the Mendums. And he's got a lot less than probably 20,000 square feet. And he's got a pole mount thing that he got a variance from the ZBA to have like 5 feet from his property line. I'm just.
So what's the point here?
Yeah, I guess that is the point. What are we trying to regulate?
Well, I mean,
CBA.
the question is we're trying to do something, is the CBA doing what we're trying to do? Are we?
No, but I think if you have good,
Loggerheads.
well, if the ZBA is looking at the whole thing on that RSA 674-21A, they're about to encourage the use of alternative energy in the whole bit. So they're trying to say, this is a good thing. Why are we restricting them? That's why they're giving them relief for those setback things, because solar has to conform to setbacks by our regulation. So I send people in there all the time to the ZBA because of a solar issue, because they can't comply with setbacks. Them trying to get this on, or there's a wetland issue, so you can't go there, you can't go in the buffer area. So, I mean, we have a lot of restrictions.
What's the buffer issue? Because
We actually had, Jack Bingham came in front of the planning board twice, I think, to mount a pole mounted, solar system in a wetland buffer.
What's the difference from that versus like a shed?
Oh, the
Because-
foundations are huge for it.
Because it says in our regulations that solar shall comply with, setbacks
The wind
and,
loads and stuff on it, you get a big
um,
foundation.
Wasn't the one on Ramsdale that we were gonna come in and do something on
did.
on the
they got
buffer?
a ZBA approval
Oh, they
because it was on too close to the front
But
setback.
then they.
When they went to build it, they made it comply with the regulations because they found out the sun was better where it complied than where
Oh,
their engineer said. I mean, there's always something going on. I mean, it's,
So the bottom line is, what do we want to do with this?
Just trying to you're trying to be productive, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're kind of slow, Bob. You're kind of slow.
You know,
so to get back to Andy's point, if we're gonna try to, if pole mounts, you want to have site review on, we'd have to check with the attorney, because if it's a residential place putting them in, I'm not sure you can, because now you're requiring a residential use to come in for site review. That's.
Yeah.
Because 1 and 2 families are exempt by site review regulations.
Or we just make it.
But do you call a pole mount solar system a commercial use and do it? I don't know. I'm not sure how that would work legally. It's not,
Well, let's say we put it in, it'll be a ZBA issue, not us, right? For residential, would it be a ZBA issue?
well, can you legally deny it? If you can't legally deny it, why are you gonna put it in there?
Well, then it's restrict the height then.
What was that?
Restrict the height. We can't say no to it. I agree with you.
I'm not saying they don't.
Visually, they're way more intrusive than ground mounted or roof mounted, no question.
But there's, like I said, there's probably 8 or 10, actually maybe more than that. Pole mount ones that haven't gone in the last couple of years, but they're always in the backyard, so you don't see them. You don't even know they're there.
Well, they're not always, because we just named like 3 that aren't.
Yeah, but I mean, the majority of them are there. You don't know they're there.
And I mean, I guess, I don't think it would be a big issue if, if I got 20 acres and it's sticking out in the back on the last, like 400 yards behind my house or whatever, I don't care. But I'm on a postage stamp, so for me to plop it right there, like looking at my neighbor's place, I think it would be an abomination to do something like that. Now legally, could I do it? Yeah, but it's god awful. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't.
We have glare regulations, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
We have stuff on glare, right?
I think glare, odor, all that
I
stuff.
mean, I'm
is-
gonna reach the sun off the lake and shoot my laser beam back over off my solar panel into Robin's nurse.
Don't turn on my lights.
Watch out for those red dots. Yeah. Appearing in your face.
That's where I say, I'm like, just because you can do something doesn't always mean you should do something.
If you're gonna continue on page
Still on
two.
page one.
No, we can flip to page two.
Page two. Setbacks. Oh, solar
Setback.
collection systems placed over parking areas and drive aisles.
Why 14 feet?
What are we on?
Page two.
Page two, the top about 14 feet over a parking lot.
Parking areas and drive aisles, like.
Yeah,
I think it's,
Language from-
I think that's something, so they have them so that people can park underneath. That's why they got the minimum height. So that if someone comes in with a truck or something, it's not hitting it, just like you go through a drive-through, they got the little roof over and they got maximum height that you can get in there. So they're having the 14 feet because 13.6 is what's legal to travel over the road. So they did that 14 so a truck could go underneath it.
store drive situation.
Understand that for commercial use or commercial property, but this just says. Systems shall be placed over parking areas or drive aisles requiring a minimum. But if I were putting it at my house, is it over a driveway?
This should be more of a commercial use than a
Yeah, it says
residential
for
use.
solar collection systems.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right, but a solar collection system could be a residential.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It doesn't indicate it's commercial.
Again,
Keep the snow off your driveway too.
So, just so we can move forward, because if we can get direction tonight, we can kind of modify some of this stuff. So maybe we should stay,
Sorry,
maybe
I'm
we
not
should
very
look
good.
at, like we have in our regulations, we have some residential uses and some commercial uses.
Okay,
So maybe we should take some of this stuff that's proposed here, separate into residential use and commercial uses, so it fits
Yes.
together on a reasonable way. Does that make
Makes
sense?
yep.
Yeah,
That way we can keep moving forward tonight.
Okay.
Good suggestion, John.
do you want to apply that across solar stuff and then? we'll-
Well, the thing is, so we actually, there's a little bit there where it talks about the setbacks.
Yep.
Okay, so if you do that and then our own zoning now, if you go to table 2, it's on page 14. It says setbacks apply to ground mount solar systems. And increase the maximum yard setback may be part of a site review regulation or a building permit process. So there's a whole thing that we have in here about the solar meeting the setbacks.
This is be for solar collection systems setbacks.
Well, that's what this is, because it says ground
Oh.
mount solar. So that's that whole thing that, this is something that's been an issue that keeps getting brought up every time that someone comes in with a solar stuff. Because all our solar has to meet setbacks because of that I that's in there listed as all the stuff that has to do with table of dimensional uses.
Yeah, I remember talking about that before though, John. We were thinking about the neighbor. I mean, if I can't put anything, why should it, I mean, it's green, obviously, but still, from my perspective, why should why should the guy be able to encroach with a ground mounted system right next to the property line when he can't put anything else beside the property line?
Yeah, he can. He can put a 200 square foot shed. Then he can put another 200 square foot shed, and then he can put another 200 square foot shed, and then he can put another 200 square foot shed all on the property line because we don't regulate the number of sheds that can go
Right.
on. I know you wanted to adjust that, and I brought that up because that was, so
That's
you
one
can
of my
put solar,
suggestions, though.
you can put solar on each one of them sheds.
Well, but I'm gonna change, I am opposed to change.
Yeah,
that.
I know. That's why I was bringing it up. So there is things that go there.
But, you know, the sheds don't have the same glare issues and stuff like that, you know, the solar panels can, depending on,
Yeah, if the solar's aimed right at the neighbor's house, it'd be a definite detriment. I 100% agree.
yeah. I mean, if I'm on the south side, panels reflect off to me.
So the setback here, it says that, I'm looking at this definition on this page, and then I'm looking at what we got here. I guess I'm looking at a direction. Do you want to have it in this stuff here and take out of this table of uses so that it's directly addressed to solar? Because you know how many people don't even know it's there? They come in and they say, I'm putting this solar here, and I go, no, you're not. Because they're not looking in the table of uses, they're looking at the solar regulations.
I think it makes sense for the solar regulations.
Mhm.
Make it easy. If people are confused, it makes sense to clarify that to the extent
Yeah.
possible.
Something.
Well, if we do leave them both in, we just want to make sure they match.
Yeah.
You know,
Or
that's,
We can reference too.
That's what I would say is just make a
Reference
reference to
to-
the table of use.
yeah, you could do something like that. Well, it's actually not table of uses, it's the dimensional
Dimensional
standards.
standards.
Standards. Whatever. We can, we can reference it there.
Just make it.
So if you use your regular standard setbacks on a regular lot of record, that's not a conservation subdivision, you're at 30 feet minimum. And you
Yeah.
go in your conservation subdivisions, all of a sudden now you're at that 15 to 20 feet.
Well, solar, it's gonna be above 20,000 square feet, right? So a lot of your conservation subdivisions are 20,000 square feet. So if it's above 20,000, if we put that regulation, it's gonna be.
They are above 20,000, most of them are in acre. So they're right, they're running around 45,000, most of those lots.
50,000, then a full acre, right?
An acre is 43,560, and a lot of them are a little over an acre when they go in.
They need to be that large to get their well. and-
Correct. They're trying to get the separation and keeping them both on the same lot.
I mean, it sounds like the ZBA is being very lenient with that, so I would start with that, and if the ZBA gives a,
So just leave it as the standard setbacks is what we're gonna do, because it says here,
yeah. let the
there
ZBA
was something here listed where they
ZBA
gave a
had-
different dimension. All right, so, okay, let's jump from the solar stuff to the next portion.
Yep.
Which is,
Can I just address real quick on page 3, we have Article 21, which is all of our solar definitions. It's not actually in the definition part. The town attorney said we could just reference Article 21 unless we want them all in the definitions. Does anybody? have any
Seems simpler,
preference?
right, to do it that way?
The reference that said 21, yeah.
I would, because then.
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about changing.
Right.
Potentially changing.
Yeah, just go to the regs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
we only, I do have one quick comment there. You know, we say for shared community use, do we want to have a minimum number?
Wait, sir, where are you at?
Under community solar,
Oh, community solar, okay.
it says primary for shared community use.
Mhm.
That's not defined as a number of users. Do we want to do that, or I mean, is two enough for community solar, my neighbor? Does that qualify as community solar, or is it gotta be more than that?
Say qualify.
Two?
Your neighbor. Go Dutch on a solar array.
Especially if you're trying to get the sun, you could orientate stuff. You're saying you're not cutting all your trees on one lot. You can kind of have a system that works together. Makes a lot of sense.
Easy to me. Okay,
So to amend it,
I think they're good with it. They're good.
Flying now, baby, page 4.
we kind of,
I sense a note of sarcasm there, Robert.
Not gonna be there until next Tuesday.
I mean, we kind of already went over this about the assisted living development, is in the commercial use in zoning districts.
Residential care
Well, since
facility.
it's not allowed, we're table of definitions, it's not allowed in that.
Right in the RC.
There should be, I would think there.
That would be
should
more appropriate.
allowed.
So we changed the table of uses, not the definition. I think where you're going with this.
Yes.
If you're really saying yes, you just want to move on.
No, I really am.
I can't believe that it's not allowed right now.
I'm getting it.
No, this is what's coming.
Well, you want it as a conditional
almost
use permit,
sense.
not just straight up, just a permitted use, correct?
Yeah, we just.
Because I mean, that would be a CP with all the districts should be CP.
Yep.
I think so, yeah.
So what about the notes 3 and 15? If you go. to
Yeah,
those.
going back to that 15, it
So
always
that's
kind
the
of jumped at
15
me.
beds is number 3, and 15 is that 10,000 of upland soils where I think it makes more sense to you could do almost like you do with your mixed housing, mixed use housing, you could say that meets the requirements of DES loading. Instead of,
Okay, instead of specifying. something.
right, say that it's gotta meet DES loading standards or something like that. Because that's, the state's gonna regulate it that way anyways. And then, the number 3 note about, no more than 15 patients or beds for such a facility. If you look at a lot of these facilities now, in order to man them, if you do 15 beds and you got 4 people working there, then you got another building with it, another building with it. It makes more sense to keep it all in the same building where you have staff to do stuff. So why do we have that 15 bed limit?
Yeah, I don't think you should have the,
I don't
let,
see
let,
a limit.
Your loading is based on room occupants, is based on the room, not on occupants. Like, they're not.
But they're doing it by beds, and I think
Built
says
by
that
beds.
they're limiting the size of the building. It says that,
It's not.
I know, no, the septic is under number 15. That was the one under number 15, the note 15, if you go to that page 96. What I'm talking about is note 3.
Page.
It says that you can't have more than 15 beds in a building.
96.
So
item
why
number
are we
15.
why are we limited the number of beds in a building when the loading and stuff has to do with? If you can put 6 buildings on the same lot, put 15 beds into 6 buildings, you still got the same loading on the same lot.
But you
That was the
have
point.
6 buildings on the same lot because it wouldn't meet our zoning.
Yes, it would. Well, it depends on,
And it would have to be town center area, and it would have to, not only would it have to be in town center, you have to be able to make sure that you left, what, 3% available space for town use and.
if you had
Civic space.
residential use to go with it, you gotta leave 25% for that civic use open space. If you just had all commercial, it's 15%. But you would still have to meet those requirements there anyways. But why are we limiting 15 per building? That's the point I'm trying to make.
It doesn't.
The beds
It's
are not-
in terms of-
Yeah, that has nothing to do with loading and density. That's just the number of buildings. Why are we limited? So you could have one building with 30 beds. What difference does it make if it meets the loading? That's the point I guess I'm trying to make.
I think
And it makes more sense to
Why have 2 buildings with
to
15
have
beds
people
per?
working in it.
One building with 30. That's the point. It doesn't make any sense. If you're allowed to have the septic loading for 30 patients, why are we requiring 2 buildings rather than let them have one building?
But I don't think it's designed, septic loading is not designed by patient, that's.
No, but let's
So,
assume
but
it's,
this is per building. So you could, so if you, even if you do septic loading, if you put 3 buildings on the same lot, because your septic will support it by the number of units or beds, whoever it is, why can't it all be in one building instead of 3 separate buildings? That's the point I guess I'm trying to make.
Exactly.
and I think that makes sense. Andy.
What there's, here's where I'm struggling with it, is when I read this, they're saying, where they came up with 15, I don't know. But when you look at the way the septic standards are applied, it's applied based on.
Yeah, but 15 addresses septic system. We're already addressing septic in 15.
Right.
Right, read note 15. That's where it talks about the septic loading.
That's already there, for which are.
This is just about the number of units per building.
This is about beds per bedroom. So when you look at the septic disposal system, it says no more than 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of upland soil, and the most restrictive shall apply. Now you take 1 bed per 10,000, or 1 bedroom, and now you're taking that bedroom and you could put up to 3 beds in that 1 bedroom. So now your 1 bedroom has triple the occupant load and affluent.
We're not talking the same
No.
thing. We're talking about the number of rooms per building.
What
So
you
this
probably-
says you can only have 15 beds in that building.
What you may want to do, Danny, your point is saying you can only have 2 patients per room. That might get where you want it. But limit it per building doesn't make any sense at all to me. Yeah, if you want to limit beds per bedroom,
John, did you want to end the number 15 by just saying maximum New Hampshire DES
I
subsurface
think, yeah, I think
regulations?
it should be whatever DES.
And then stop it there and erase everything after regulations.
So the only concern I have with that, and this is, if anybody has, it's less of a concern where you have a POTW, but because we are on private septic systems, when you look at nursing cared facilities, things like that, the systems are not designed to handle the byproduct that's coming out, whether it's cancer treatment drugs, it's medications, and what you're seeing is you see feminization of fish. You're seeing changes to the environment from it, and none of that is caught or treated in a standard effluent disposal system. So when you start looking at that, you're gonna see, and it's different than a normal residential load, because in a normal residential load, you have a very limited amount of that. When you concentrate that population into a very tightly dense effluent disposal system, you're not actually gonna
Yeah,
treat any of
but
that.
agreeing with that though, let's say that I have 3 buildings going into one septic system. Then because I'm limited my number of patients per building. What's the difference if I put them in one building? It doesn't make any, that doesn't make any sense. I agree what you're saying.
So what you're saying is the state needs to change their standards.
They do.
For
but
the
we don't have-
septics.
We don't have control of it.
But three doesn't accomplish that. Three
Right.
does not accomplish that. 3 does not address your.
In a way it does. I'm not saying I agree that 15 is the number. What I'm saying is it does is because now it becomes a dollars issue. It's a math problem. And the.
But what are you
cost of
trying to limit?
building
What are you trying to limit, Andy? What are you trying to limit? Let me ask that.
what?
What are you trying to prevent?
I'm just trying to make sure that we don't end up with like this massive influx of a building that is not manageable or capable of being addressed in our community.
Well, but once
Because
again,
it
once again,
becomes-
one
because it
massive
becomes a
building
right
or
of use.
3 medium-sized buildings that are the same square footage.
It won't happen though. That's what you're not understanding is it will not happen because it's a math problem.
Yeah, but
If you-
I don't think economically trying to limit it. If we're worried about septic systems, we should deal with that with directly, not trying to impose additional costs on the developer.
Parent-child conversation we had earlier. We don't have right of control over that.
I-
We are the child in the relationship.
But I think you're trying to control that.
It's the way that the town's been able to control that.
So what you're saying, this is what I'm taking out of what you're saying. It's infeasible for an elder care facility to do 15 beds, because you gotta put 4 people working in there in this building. You gotta put 4 or 5 in this building. You gotta put 4 or 5 in this building. Now you need 20 workers to handle 45 beds, because because of that bill. You put it all in one building, you might have 10 workers. So it has nothing to do with the size of the building. It has to do with the economics of the people that you put in there to make the facility work. So basically by making them small, each building smaller, you're just making them have to hire more staff, which that's the economic part that they wouldn't do it. And because it doesn't work economically. So why don't we just say no assisted care is in town, if that's what you're trying to achieve?
I mean, I think our regulations already proven with the last proposal that it's pretty damn tough to.
That's what the economic issue was, and that's
Right.
what they tried to show as the hardship. But I love FX, don't get me wrong. He come out and he goes, if you don't allow this, we can do this, 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 and this. And it's like, okay, you just shot your hardship right there because you showed you had uses that were available.
I think if we have a septic issue or we're worried about septic loading, we should deal with that directly, not trying to make it economically feasible. I think we should, I don't think we should, elder cost should cost any more. We can make it as efficient as possible. That's the right thing to do. And I think if we're worried about septic loading, we should deal with that issue that way.
I think it's more than septic loading. It becomes a compounded community cost.
You're talking about ambulance responses
Yeah,
and so
police,
stuff like that.
fire,
I wonder how Riverwoods works out.
The cost is huge. It's actually, most of it is borne by the residents because they buy into it.
Yeah,
into
plus
their-
plus
into their-
$3,000 to $6,000 a month on top of the buy-in.
Yeah.
Right.
But not by the town of Durham.
No.
So it's borne by the.
The residents themselves know that going
The
in.
town of Durham picks up the ambulance care part of it. If
What
you
they
have
say-
an
Well, let's-
Insurance
Company that comes out
It-
pays
it
the
bills.
ambulance care to the town, so the town gets reimbursed. The town,
to a degree.
Right.
Not a full degree, like you could bill your rate to the insurance company at $5,000 and the town and or let's just say $500, because that's a good round number and what I know Rick's used. And the insurance company could say, no, we only pay 150 because this person has Medicare, or Medicaid, or pick your, whatever their program is. So now you forfeited $350 toward your care.
Yeah, but you could take up the taxes from the facility. It's gotta probably. No kids in school, nobody in school. So it's gotta be a winner.
But I think,
And we gotta be realistic. Riverwoods isn't gonna come to Barrington. There's no sewer, there's no water. So
They're not.
that's not even a comparison for what we're looking at. We're looking at the smaller building and I agree. Why force them to have two buildings
Or 3 buildings.
or three
whatever.
buildings and allow them to have one that's a reasonable size
Which I
and the
guess I have-
DES loading is approved for.
I have less of an issue with that, I guess, if it's all tied to the commercial sector and they have a commercial lot and they're able to do all of it. greatly in that.
It's all listed as a commercial use.
yeah, I don't think they're ever gonna end up in the town center. It just, there's no room for anything that's viable economically.
Economically, if they could merge the buildings together and not limit the beds, that would go perfectly in Kayla's field there. That's what they came in for. They showed it how it all worked, but they needed a higher density.
Needed the
to make
height,
it work.
yeah.
And our density was saying that you can only have 15, and they're like, if we gotta build 6 buildings and we gotta staff 6 buildings, it doesn't work economically. That was part of what their argument was.
So by changing this, you're making it so that that property suddenly becomes a very viable option to go do that.
But what's
I
wrong
think
with
there's
that?
nothing
I
wrong
guess
with
what's the issue?
Right.
Why
Well,
do you
that's one
not
of the
want it?
things everybody wanted in the,
I like that. I know you didn't like that plan. but I like that. I like that plan.
I completed my survey and said I was sad that failed.
yeah, I know. A
I'm with
lot
you.
of people said, I can't believe it
That's right,
failed.
it's behind together, man.
Because they always say they want things for people who cannot live in their houses.
And that's the reason
They
why
didn't
we're
want to
talking
live in
about.
Barrington.
That's the reason why we're talking about these changes, because the public, and stuff that came back to us was, we support this, we want this, we want to be able to live out our lives in Barrington. We grew up in Barrington, we want to be able to stay. So that's why these were the
Yeah.
things that were the handicap things, and that's why we're trying to address them, so that could be achieved. Now, if you don't want to achieve that, then that's a whole different issue. Leave it alone so that nothing will come in on that. That's,
I
How
think
about we delete item number 3?
to pull a Bob,
footnote
to pull
3.
a Bob,
I think
move
that would
forward.
work.
We take a vote on this, Andy, you're going down in flames.
What else is new, which is why I just told you, plan on doing all that.
So-
Position anyway.
So who wants to delete item number 3, footnote? 2, vote up, 3. Do I have a 4?
Oh,
Donna,
I'm gonna have a bunch.
delete that restriction. Okay, so we got 4 votes, that's all we need. Good. All right, we're gonna take a formal vote about deleting,
I'll
Foot-
make sure I get.
point of order. Deleting item footnote, number 3.
I'm in favor of encouraging or being
Okay.
open to this.
Okay.
Deleting it, yeah.
Yeah, what do you call it?
Yay.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
That way
yes,
everybody has
Yep.
a fair.
yep, everybody, yep.
well, this is just really for changes, because you're going to vote on the whole thing at the end.
Oh, yeah, this is just, this is
Right,
no
well,
longer,
it's just to move this forward and writing it up, is all it
just
is.
not getting stuck on that 15 beds.
Yeah, so number 6.
He's
So,
done. He's
so,
done. Can we follow you? Can we follow?
so,
He's leaving that one at least too.
so I brought this up earlier, so if you go to, note 6,
Okay, no structure may contain more than 8 dwelling units.
all right, so that was the one I talked to, we tried to find in the building codes and the fire code what the restriction was, and there's nothing in those codes at all that restricts that. So why do
Okay,
we have that there, I guess is,
I don't know.
God bless you.
The town doesn't want to have like
No
rows of.
structure, okay.
Like, what's the right word for it?
you would have rows, you would have an 8 unit, another 8 unit, another 8 unit, another 8 unit, that's what you have in it. Yeah, so that's, note 6.
Footnote 6 on,
Yeah,
no,
go
on
back
on
here,
the
zone
table of uses.
9-6.
What is, was there,
We're still in the.
what I
on the lake
believe
house.
they did is they're trying to prevent stockade style housing.
I mean, I think that what we have across the middle school, we have clusters.
Yep.
I think that's a good thing, John. I think I'm okay.
Now,
with
this
it.
guy over here could only do the 8.
I think I kind of like
in
that.
his building, because I
Yeah,
guess. they-
so you
right,
did like, yeah, Paul Thibodeau did that. He did what, 3 buildings or something
Yeah.
in his in order to do
Six,
that?
yeah.
I think that's good, rather than have.
Oh,
a-
the other one.
You know, a long string of 16 or 20 that
Yeah.
are unbroken.
So I guess what it come down to, because I'm gonna go back to that whole thing that when they did the presentation for that elderly thing, they were saying that they did the commercial on the first floor. And then they had residents living above, especially if someone, let's say your wife's there and you want to be able to live there so you could be close by and stuff. Now you're limited to 8 units on that second floor. So you make this bigger building, which allows more than the 17 beds in it. You got this bigger building, but now you can't put all the residents up on the second floor that you want. That was one of the things they brought forward. That was a handicap to being able to build that out.
I think that's good for a ZBA issue, though. I think having a limit eight per structure is good. Are there exceptions to that the ZBA can look at? I'm okay with that.
Otherwise you end up with this big stockade style house.
I mean, the cluster housing, all that kind of stuff that they want in conservation, I think it's even in.
It's not cluster housing. This
Yeah.
would be like a multifamily type thing where they could have more than 8 in one building.
But if you go really, really long, you can't get to the backyard, you have to walk around the whole thing. I think having limited 8 to structure, I think that's good to me.
So when you were comparing it to the apartments, but those are, is
It's
there
like
only 8 units in each one of those?
The maximum 8, some of them only have 2, some of them have 6.
Okay.
In Terrazole, 4 units, right?
Only about 35, if you get more than 8, you're talking really long. So if
I'd
you
have
wanna
to
get
go
in your
back and look
backyard,
at
you
it.
wanna-
Leave the-
it's
yeah,
really
the-
in the
Yeah,
backyard.
we just looked at it, so there's 4.
The one across from the middle school, there's a couple of buildings that had 8s. There was a couple of buildings that had 2. There's a couple of buildings with.
Terra was gonna be starting.
Well, the
soon.
apartments were all the same size. They tried to use the topography of the land because you keep the building kind of level, so they were
Right.
stacking their buildings up to make it work.
I personally am okay with leaving it that way. Right.
And that was one of that was one of the handicap things that the ZBA was looking at when they came in with that presentation. That's why we brought it forward.
But ZBA, they can go for ZBA and get a variance on this. So it's not like it's, absolutely forbidden. It's,
So,
you gotta.
so when you go in,
adjustment.
you make it sound like the ZBA variance is a guarantee. So what happens is when you go to the ZBA to get a variance, what's the hardship on this lot that's different than any other lot that could possibly build it? If there's lots of the same as the other lots, there's no hardship, there's no reason to give a variance. So this variance thing, because you go ask the ZBA, is not automatically granted.
It shouldn't be automatic.
The non-nursing part of the proposal for just people over 65, I guess, or 62, they wanted what, 30 units, 30 dwelling units?
Something like that.
Yeah,
It was,
32,
well, what they wanted, they wouldn't be able to do even
a
in this
separate
because
building, yeah.
because that residential use, you would still go back to our density in that zone, which is that 40,000 per unit. Because remember, it used to be 10,000 for each
Yep.
additional and they got
Right.
changed to 40. So they still got to use that 80,000 for the first unit and then 40 for each additional unit.
Oh,
So they wouldn't get the density anyway. So when they went to the ZBA, they were asking for like 5 times as much density than is allowed in the zoning, which was a huge ask.
yeah,
That was for the residential portion
right.
alone.
it was
And
in
then they
it.
still had all the other uses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then they did daycare center and the doctor's office and all that other stuff too. I don't.
I'm not
it's
saying
gonna
we're
be
trying,
difficult for
I'm not
anybody
trying
to
to
do
say
this.
we need to sell this. I'm just saying a lot of
No.
people come forward is, we have these handicaps and is there a reason for them, you know?
Yeah,
And where do the 8 units come from? Maybe a broken.
If there is a market for, the other spouse to live there, then.
And especially if you got a building now that you have that 40 beds in on the first floor that they're doing it. Now you got a bigger building. Because you could do 2-story residential above, just like they were doing the thing with the Dove. Now you're only using 1/4 of the building, so, but they still got to do staffing on that thing for the lower building to make it economical. And your mixed housing has to be on the second floor by a regulation. Now, they could go to the ZBA for that and say, because we're not able to put more than 8 units in a building and we have this size building, the building, because of that use, might create the hardship to give them.
I mean, I think, I hear what you're saying on the feedback on that. But the feedback on these developments that have, a bunch of, is poor. And people hate them.
And the thing is, if you open the door, you open it to all of them. It's not like you're
Everything.
restricting it back.
you can't
Right.
restrict it to what we,
Correct.
maybe somebody might want for elderly.
Okay, so the question of the 8 units is staying. Just, we brought it up, we addressed it, we'll move forward.
Yep.
All right.
Like a definition for elderly housing?
We bother.
Well, for the congregate housing thing, that whole thing was coming out, is that was the agreement? I know Andy was against it, but I don't know if the rest of you guys weighed in.
They said.
Did you take that out at the front? Yeah.
The front and said no,
I think we're willing to kick that down the road.
that was a no.
They just taken the whole thing right out, so.
The congregate care facility.
Yeah. The elderly housing. This was before where the 65 and over housing was actually presented in Barrington a while ago, and when we did the housing demographics, more than 80% of the households in Barrington had someone 65 or older. So to give an extra housing density, the planning board at that time decided that that's the general demographics. Why are we gonna give them extra density? Because they say 65 and over, when HUD mandates you can't exceed, you can't make it be more than 80%. And then once the person that's over 65 sells it, they can sell it to whoever they want. So most of the time, these 65 and over housing things turn into just regular housing over time, and it doesn't. So there's been a lot of people asking if we do 65 and over, we want a higher density. So that almost goes opposite to that thing that we did where we're not allowing the 10,000 per unit, moving to the 40,000. So did you want to have that way? Because the elderly housing always comes out that they want that 65 and over, they want a higher density.
If elderly housing is designed as a place for somebody to age in place, that's the whole point that they were pushing for EDUs. Is that you could have a person age in their room, but age in a smaller space and then have additional family.
Well, the ADU argument was twofold. It was if you had a college kid that's just getting out of school, they could live in a smaller unit. And then all the people with their family could live in the bigger one. And then if they got older and their kids were gonna come back to help take care of them, they would need a larger units and the adults could go into the other one. But the ADU wasn't just for that because you could rent it to anybody you want. There was no requirement for it to be a family member or anything.
No, but it was sold as, it was a place for a parent to age in their house and move into that space.
That was one of the option things. A lot of it had to do with affordable housing for people when they first get out of school and trying to get started too. That was the other sale thing they pushed on that too, yeah. But anyways, the elderly housing, the density thing, do you guys want to have it? So if you have that elderly housing, that they get an extra density?
So
There's no
elderly housing,
definition.
You can't make it.
Because of HUD,
Sell to. You can't-
because of HUD, you can't mandate more than 80%. And then what happens is once the person, let's say they bought it, it was a condo type thing, or they rented it. When someone comes in to do it after that first system goes by, it's like whoever first come, first serve almost, they can go in.
That's not accurate. You can actually do it, but it has to go on as a deed restriction. You make it a deed restriction so that it has to be, conditionally, it has to be sold to somebody that now meets the criteria and qualify.
But there was a thing on the legal point that if someone, let's say I bought it because I'm over 65, I go to sell it and I can get my best price from someone that's 40, I have a right to sell it to that person 40 because I own it, it's mine.
But not if you you have a right, but if you bought it with a deed restriction, you knew that going into it under the deed restriction, that you were restricted in who you could sell it to and when it is, and that would stand up all day in a court of law. Anytime that's challenged.
That's not what I was told by an attorney, but maybe you're right.
Because
You know,
that's the same thing as like covenants being put in place for a neighborhood. You buy a house in that neighborhood with these covenants in place.
And the only people that can enforce that covenants is the people in that. So the only ones that can enforce that thing on that housing thing is not the town. It's going to be the people that live in there because it's their covenants. And if the majority of the people don't care, especially when it gets older, how many of them, pardon my language, turns into welfare housing? And it has in the past.
I'm just saying you can do it through the deed restriction of how it's done.
But the town can't enforce the deed restriction. That's the point.
Get some clarification.
I mean, candidly, I don't like anything like that where you put some kind of easement or restriction on it because at the end of the day, you have to have somebody to enforce them, and the reality is
We just don't have a definition for it, so that's why.
But once you say elderly housing, I have people come in all the time, well, we're gonna do 65 and over, we need a higher density. our regulations don't allow it now because we made sure of that back when I was on the board because of the demographics in town.
But what kind of density, what kind of density are we talking about changing?
No, we're not.
Oh,
She's
we're not.
doing a definition, but if you do the definition of elderly housing, and when it comes down to this, usually what happens is the next step is how much of a density am I gonna get for elderly housing? Why you call it elderly housing? If you don't allow a higher density and stuff for elderly housing, why even worry about putting a definition of elderly housing in?
Yeah, and in this case, they say it's specifically controlled by a public body, institutional body, or nonprofit corporation.
Okay,
So you would have to make it, you could do like we were talking about with the deed restriction, and it would be enforced by one of them.
but,
So
so,
we're gonna do a conjugate housing definition.
No.
No.
No, we're not.
We nixed
Okay.
that.
We're gonna keep it. We're not gonna.
We're not adding it.
Nixed it.
So where does it allow, if someone wanted to do a group home for disabled, where it would be an age range? Where is that?
Group home for disabled?
Yeah. Somebody wanted to do a.
It would be an
couple of
assisted
huge
care facility.
Yeah, that's what I think it would be. It'd be under,
Additional permit. Which you can't do in our commercial zoning currently, so.
actually, you can. The assisted living facility, you can.
Living.
Well, the elderly assisted care home is the what is not allowed, but your assisted living facility is allowed. The two different definitions.
So you can need assisted living, but you can't be elderly.
I didn't like this. I mean, it's in here. I'm just saying that's what's in here right now.
That's what we got written down.
as soon as you get old, you gotta get out. You have to leave.
Figure out what it means later.
65, move it or lose it, you're out of here.
So
Elderly residents for the elders.
I'm still a little confused here. If
We got rid of that, right?
we eliminated it?
We got rid of 15 people.
We're still in elderly housing.
Oh,
right?
it says that right there. Oh, in the,
Zoning ordinance for elderly assisted care home talks about a number of housing, number of people.
And that's in the definition. It's not in the table.
right, so we have to make the definition comply to, can't restrict it in the numbers, right? Right.
So do you want to put a number, you want to leave that number restriction in there or take it out? I guess that was what. Right now, our definition says,
76 is the zoning.
76.
the very bottom.
It's the very bottom about elderly assisted care home.
So would restrict assisted.
Number of
Make
people.
sure, so disabled people would only be allowed.
It's, it's the same 15 resident thing that was in the footnote, right? Still talks about 15 people.
Right.
So if we get rid of the footnote, then we have to
Then you have
get rid
to
of the
edit.
15.
So we have one of these out on 202. It's, I think it's got what, 8 units or 10 units or something in there. It's not very big. It's basically a house that got transformed in and they got, you know.
Do we want to limit it to 15?
Route
people?
9, yeah.
So I think that the concept of this was to keep it, so you keep that residential feel because you have, you know, like a house, you have that other one over on Route 9. So all those kind of look like houses, so they kind of go into the neighborhood. You're not doing this commercial institutional like building where you've got, you know, the massive care, which is what Andy was talking about before.
Would be allowed.
Well, right now it's allowed as conditional use in all the districts for the way our table of uses is written.
Except for regional commercial, it's
Except
not
for regional
allowed.
commercial, which you want to put it, that's why we're talking about putting it in, because right now that's the only place it can't go.
So we have to put footnote 3 back in the table of uses.
Why?
Well, if you
Because
want
it's
it,
in the definition,
I know, if you, that's one.
should we get it out of the definition?
So do you, do you want to keep that so it has that quaint little thing to keep it as a country feel, or or is it okay to allow a larger commercial one, which is more economically viable to operate? So that's kind of that same argument back and forth. And you can't write a regulation that says, okay, I want to have one way and one the other. You got to write it as a whole.
Right,
Well, you could. You can write it so that anything outside of regional commercial.
Right, so you could do a zone.
Size and occupancy through the zone.
And that's why I think the conditional use permit works, because when you come in with that 3.4 and you go through the whole criteria, you wouldn't allow this great big massive building where you got residential homes all around it, you want to keep the smaller one. But if they're in a commercial type atmosphere where you got larger commercial businesses and a larger commercial building is in, and that's the whole reason for the conditional use permit.
So you want to keep the CP and you want to keep footnote 3 and 15 in that line?
Well, I'm saying, why would you keep 3 and 15?
Well, I mean, it's currently,
Right now, it regulates it so you can, but I think if you do your conditional use permit, if you go,
okay.
I
do
feel
it.
like I'm dragging this meeting up,
Yeah.
because if you read the three
Right here.
now, then
You would
you'll
remove-
understand what the
you would
conditional
remove
use
those.
is and how you
Second
go
line,
through
the
it.
second line says planning board may increase.
The 3 and the
residence
15.
Yeah.
To the grant
Okay.
Yeah.
initial use.
And then we're gonna get rid of it in the definition too,
On the definition,
where it
that
says 15.
permanent housing up to 15 elderly residents. I think that's the question is like, it
Yeah.
says 15 here.
So if you take that out,
Take that out. Yeah.
if you read,
Okay,
if you
that-
read
but
your
so my
3.4
only point-
conditional use, then you
Take
can
out
understand how you can apply it.
So
differently
the
depending
permanent
on
housing.
When they come in.
I think you're.
'Cause I think everybody's got to go from asking for the big building.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
But if you limit it, then you can't get the big
Permanently
building.
housing,
That's
you go
where-
right to residents with common dining facilities. Okay, sounds good.
So do you want to try to write that? I guess that's where Andy's at. So do you want to try to put a regulation that
Right
you
here.
keep the limited number of units for your regular use, but then say in the commercial zone, that number doesn't apply or something like that? You could probably do something like that.
Yes.
So in that regional commercial,
I think in the
Yeah.
residential zone, I think keeping a cap on it for
Oh.
sure.
so if we go back to the table of uses, so if you look at your general residential, then what about your neighborhood residential? What about the highway commercial overlay? Do you want to have it so?
That's,
I think,
125, 4.
125 and 4, that's just regional commercial.
I think,
So,
okay,
so take the limits on the number off in the regional commercial, but leave the number limits in on all the other zones?
you want to do it in the village and in town center?
I think you should take,
Well, the town center is where they proposed it, which everybody was all excited and wanting to have it,
In
so.
theory, that's gonna revitalize your downtown.
Right.
Hmm.
Drive services and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
all those wheelchairs going across
Yeah.
Route 9, right?
All right, as I.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna put a
as I
bridge.
pointed out, as I pointed out to Andy at the time, just because you're over 65 doesn't mean you're in a wheelchair.
I'm not sure how we'd write that, but I think we understand the concept of what you're looking for to try to bring it forward to another meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
but let's clarify one point. What's the board's feeling on village and town center? In favor.
favor.
In favor, okay.
So allow larger buildings in the 3 zones and then their residential zones, only the smaller ones?
Yeah.
Perspective. I think you'll find is like, you're gonna push this and it's gonna go before the people. It's gonna get killed.
We've done plenty of things that people hate.
It will get poo-pooed.
Well,
Get
then
voted.
Change the regs.
So anyways, just for conversation to move this forward tonight, we're gonna bring it forward. Those 3 districts can have the larger buildings and the other ones don't. And you're still gonna have a chance to vote on this and have your discussion and hold your public hearing and the whole bit.
That way, when I'm like rallying against it, I only have to rally against one piece of it.
But before you do that, John, there's 4 districts we're talking putting in, right?
oh wait,
Four.
highway commercial overlay, right?
Yeah. town
Oh, you
center,
want to put
village.
in the highway commercial overlay?
I thought we said yes to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just want the smaller ones for your general residential and neighborhood residential
Yeah.
and allow larger buildings in the other ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know I'm making a lot of work for you.
Yeah. Well, that's making more sense. I mean,
Right.
more sense.
Highway commercial overlay picks up 202, 26, 9, and Parker Mountain Road.
So maybe
That's
not.
126, yeah.
So maybe
That's-
not.
That's why I wasn't sure. That's why I didn't think you were gonna do the highway commercial overlay, but I can see that you want it.
I mean, I think those are highly traveled roads. I don't think that, to me, I wouldn't limit it on those roads, but that's certainly reasonable discussion.
Wow.
Well,
But
it's
what we're
still-
talking is like Church Street
Yeah.
is 126, which is a part of the highway commercial overlay.
Parker Mountain.
Parker Mountain Road's 126.
It's part of the, part of the. commercial overlay. You're not gonna put a commercial care facility out there.
I could live with village center.
regional commercial village center and then the, town center.
Not gonna follow. Throw myself in front of a train for that one. Fine.
No, me neither.
So,
Maybe we should get a consensus.
Yeah,
You're right, John, 3. You were right the first time, 3.
provided up with 3 of each. No.
okay.
So the highway commercial overlay,
In the
Village,
residential.
town
mean,
center, and
You're
the,
gonna.
the village, the town center and the regional commercial can have the larger buildings and the other ones not.
so there will
You're
still
still
be,
gonna get a chance to discuss this and vote on it moving forward.
still be a conditional use permit. It's not by right.
All by conditional
Unless
use.
they don't have the 315 restrictions.
So
Okay.
you build whatever's the most efficient for them to do. You're gonna get a turd and I'm gonna be able to like.
Remember, tax revenue without kids is a good thing.
It is, you're gonna end up with a turd and I'm just gonna sit back and shut.
someday.
You're right. You're right, I am. But it won't be living in the turd down. in the
Okay.
village
Let's
district.
get moving here.
Center.
Elderly housing.
So do we gotta go to 6?
Yeah, six, all right, moving right along.
We're halfway, everybody.
The elderly housing assisted,
Really? Is it only 12 pages?
Elderly housing assisted living facility.
I don't
Boy,
know
that's a
if those
mouthful.
are-
Okay, what? Were we?
Elderly housing assisted living facility.
That's in case you wanted to,
Nobody.
Who is it? Oh,
I hope that's not these.
Two definitions right there.
It's just gonna change the definition, because you can go to our definitions now and see what we got.
mhm.
All right, we can change that.
Because we show it as a use, but I don't think we actually had a definition on it.
Person
Put it in.
living
All right,
facility.
do it. Elderly. Elderly care facility. Oh, that's one that had up to 15.
Right now,
Oh,
the
yeah, I
only
think
thing
I
we
read
have is, elderly assisted care, so we don't have the elderly housing. But it says assisted living,
Oh, yeah.
so you would basically almost be taking, this is the one that had that 15 ones that we just talked about earlier,
Yep.
and this is the other new definition.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you wanna try to make a change that kind of keeps some of it, or not make the change.
Oh, boy.
This is
It's
if it's
quite a big
resident.
definition, doesn't it? Special combination of housing, supportive services, personalized assistance.
The other one is short and direct, but it doesn't list everything, but it's,
Central private kitchen, oh, too wordy.
because right now, what our definition says, means for a residential facility, permanent housing up to 15 elderly residents with common dining facilities and accessory use typically needed for elderly persons. The planning board may increase the number of residents through a gaining of a conditional use permit, is how it's actually listed
We
right
just
now.
have
We have,
15, I think.
no, they wanted to keep that for 3 zones in.
Oh, for the 3, yeah.
It's a zone, 3 zones, right?
I think it's just way too verbose.
Yeah,
So
which is-
stay with the definition
what
we
we
got.
have.
okay.
Everybody agree?
So going on to
Just
the next
thank you.
section, number 5, or just, from our table of uses, there's no definitions for these.
Arts and
Um,
crafts,
There's no arts and crafts establishments. I mean,
artist studio.
We have it as a listed use, but we don't have a definition.
Yep.
for it.
so if there's no definition for it in the planner dictionary, they call it an artist studio.
Okay,
I don't know. if
That
you wanna
is the
change it.
definition.
that
Mhm.
sounds good.
So are we approving tiny houses?
You're getting this.
What?
Because when I read this,
How tiny?
it's designed to be used or used as both a dwelling place and a place of work by an artist, artisan, or craftsperson, including persons engaged in the application, teaching, and performance of fine arts, such as but not limited to drawing, vocal, or instrumental music, painting, sculpture, and writing.
So that could be in addition to,
So right
Yeah, but
now,
how are you
the
getting
size-
out of that?
the size of the unit, right now, someone can build a small house. I actually had someone build a 400 square foot house. Kind of met the definition of a dwelling unit and had all the stuff with it. Now, so if someone does a shop that they can live in and do this, whether it's in 400 square foot or 2,000 square foot, is it wrong to say they can live in a place where they operate their business?
Build a bunch of these. Hey, I have a community of artisan studios here.
But you're still only allowed the one dwelling per lot with the whole bit. It doesn't say you can go multiple on the same lot.
But it doesn't say I can't here either.
But our regulation
Every
says there's
structure-
no
every structure's
primary,
got a-
Still, it's
you're
one
only
per
allowed
lot.
one primary structure per
Meet
lot.
the zoning.
By our zoning, still only allows one primary structure. And that would be a primary structure.
It may only be one structure, it's multiple units within the structure. For artisan studios.
Do we actually
Again,
need
if
that
I went,
here?
if I went. I-
No,
if I
those
went
are like
and bought
other
that,
additional.
I'd almost, I would bet
definitions
money
there.
I'd win.
Yeah, I think you would.
So you could just do the
I can put-
workspace
I can
for
put
artists,
10 I'm gonna put 10 of
artisans
These little dwelling things in here, and I'm gonna put dwellings in
for
it.
the
and
first.
have them Run their business. So I'm putting it all in as a
It's a
business.
community of artisan studios.
What about the?
Let's keep the first sentence. and
Let's keep
call it a
it.
day.
The chairman wants order.
Yeah,
The
middle.
second sentence, keep the first and the third.
sounds good.
Okay,
Good thing you showed up today, Andy.
I'm sorry I'm being such a pain at everyone's rear end.
it's all right.
I think you
I've
said
timed
that
you.
one.
You
that
only
one would've
cost
been
us
back to back.
41 minutes so far. Okay, I love the next one. We up to automobile parts.
Mhm.
Display and sale used parts on the lawn. I think Andy raised this issue earlier that they could put,
Doesn't say on the lawn.
well, display.
kidding.
It's not inside the, doesn't say inside the building. You just, have parts there. Parts is
Or
parts.
instead of saying use of land, say a building that sells parts. You
Right.
know, you can have.
Has
it
to
exact.
stay in the
We
building,
wouldn't
but
have
don't
to
we
do
already
it.
have that?
We don't have a definition.
Nope.
What-
That's what the problem is.
Yep.
Oh,
So you could have your
Like-
automotive,
I was
parts and
thinking more of
supplies.
Napa,
No,
right, that's why,
stores.
but then you could say use of a building, then it's not out in the lawn. 'cause It's
Okay.
not using the
So
land.
just say,
Building for sale of
building
new
f-
use
no,
automobiles.
building for the use of,
Yep.
the
building
display
for-
of,
Building
so
for that.
take out the and land.
Sounds good. And,
Bank.
yeah, use of any land area, we're taking that out. Thanks, Sean. Good. Bank, we don't have a definition for bank.
We have things. Those don't have a definition.
We,
Nope.
was Rob last
Most
week.
towns say we got too many banks.
Yeah.
Because was Rob last week.
They won't tell us.
Not a lot.
$38.
Not worth it, that's for sure.
Yeah, time lock says.
Big crime here in Barrington.
B and B definition.
Formerly single-family dwelling.
Why does that have to be?
That's what I was wondering. People can live upstairs or out in the garage.
Well, once you say a single family dwelling,
Sounds good.
Okay.
Where does it say that?
4 to 5 room range.
Oh. Yeah, because what if someone had 2 rooms they wanted to rent out? You're gonna say no?
Yeah.
catch.
Okay, good catch, yep.
We got the big house on the lake and they have 25 rooms on a 1/4 acre lot. Is that okay?
I think I'm okay with the max, but not the min. You know what I mean? Let's say you say limited to 5 rooms. I think the 4 to 5 rooms is bad, but up to 5 rooms is okay.
Well, I would say, because it's all listed as a conditional use permit, I think that when they come in with the 3.4, even if you don't have a thing, you could look at the compatibility of the neighborhood, because if it's in the regional commercial, you might allow something different than you would if it was a small lot on the lake.
Right, and you're changing the use of it at that point, so now they have to suddenly comply with fire code.
And that's all listed as a commercial use.
Yeah.
So you're probably not gonna get that, because I have people call all the time and they ask me if they can do bread and breakfasts, and what I find out they want to do is they want to rent their place out on the lake
Airbnb.
weekly. So
Yeah.
you can rent it weekly, but you can't do a bread and breakfast, and they call in the weekly rental the bread and breakfast, even though that's not what it is. So usually when someone says, can I do a bread and breakfast, my next thing is, okay, I got a few questions for you.
But let's say a single family dwelling, I mean, how many How many rooms can you get in a single family dwelling? I mean, capping at 5 seems to me to be,
If you had an old Victorian, you could easily have anywhere from 7 to 13. There's a
Jeez.
whole,
if you get an old Victorian, you're gonna rent them out. You're gonna convert.
In Portsmouth,
bathrooms in
they got a lot of those big old houses and you go there and people don't even live in the house. Every single room is rented. And it's like they got a kitchen area in the old living rooms, the old dens and everything. Those are all
Single room occupancy,
correct.
SROs.
But they always end up converting, they always taking out bedrooms, to put in bathrooms, because no one wants to rent a room without an, ensuite.
Shared bathroom. or
So
whatever.
these old Victorians, they don't have bathrooms in every room, so they always go in whatever bedrooms they had before, they end up with half of them by the time they're done.
some of them do.
Yeah, there's some in Portsmouth I worked on when I was a builder where you got 2 bathrooms and you got 12 units. And they share them. And the thing is, they have them rented all the time because people want to, I don't know what it is, want to go to Portsmouth from out of state. I don't get it, but.
But do we want that here?
Do you want to take out the last 2 sentences?
Often,
We can spend the day in Barrington.
It's-
Well, the older characters.
okay, often.
Now we can call it
properties
spend the
purchased
day and the
specifically
night
to be
in
a
Barrington.
B&B.
I'm just
Yeah,
thinking.
maybe
I'm
it
thinking
should
5
be
times tonight.
done.
I'm over-
Shouldn't be there.
I'm over on that. I know the evening is late.
So for the last 2 sentences, we're talking about striking out, often the property is purchased specifically to be a B and B, but many are converted family homes.
Why would you put that in there anyway?
All right, it's gone.
Yep.
Do we hear that the B and B usually has
No,
Why are we
I don't
getting into, reservations?
I don't know. I did copy paste, man.
Is there-
Copy
You
paste.
forgot the 800 number.
Yeah. So it's
say
looking
that's
at legal
fixed,
zone area meets tax fire requirements of property.
All right.
I'm not gonna get in with the sign, right? No. No. Okay. Pool hall,
Want to put pool hall / billiard parlor? Make it the same? Find them, because billiards, some people say billiards and pools different.
It is
I
different,
know.
different size table.
We allow billiard parlors, but we don't have a
English
pool
though,
thing
mostly.
listed in
Don't have
the
pool.
uses.
Mm-mm.
I'm saying if we're gonna use pool hall, do we want to make it one pool hall / billiard parlor have the same definition is my question. That's what I'm saying, John.
Probably.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Just put a,
Good.
And then the other ones we can, take out
Right.
if you want. Those are
Take out
just
the other one.
extra things.
So this is where like I read some of these and we get into very restricted guidelines here where regarding the size and right after this says whether activated manually or by an insertion of coins, tokens, or other mechanical device. If you've been to any billiard hall at this point, you go in, you pay by the hour, you don't activate anything of the sort. It's not even.
they still have some.
Not like the bars. The bars, they want their quarters.
Like that, and
That's
balls
what I have
dump
at my
out.
office.
And the balls dump out.
Ski ball, you still put the quarters.
I guess my question would,
Maybe.
do we need to define that?
No, let's just keep, you want to keep the
And
first.
also,
That's under the yeses coming up, by the way.
I don't think you even need to get into the.
Nope.
Yeah.
Again,
and I would say, why are we saying installs and serves intoxicating beverages on the premise? Why are we even saying that?
I was wondering the same thing.
I mean, it's a good thing, but I don't think we want to say.
Just that
anything
you
about
know,
it.
say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why bowling alley talks about floor area, but that's the only definition they had.
All right.
I'm assuming that may be because if anybody's seen Dover Bowl lately, all of a sudden.
10 lanes.
Yeah, there's 10 lanes and a
Yeah.
casino next to it and.
Casinos, gotta watch those, they're sprouting up like
They,
crazy.
No.
they make more money.
Yeah.
Apparently, like enough that they took out lanes.
Rochester's talking about putting one in
Yeah.
now.
Okay, let's continue. We're gonna.
We couldn't even get Keno past here, right?
No,
Um,
still kills me.
the professional, business and professional offices,
You're gonna capitalize bowling, right? Capitalize the BM bowling?
utilize the professional office definition. I think I probably put that under P. Office professional,
Office park,
Oh, okay.
and then office park for the one underneath it too.
okay.
Either change it or we can just use the definitions. So if you go like business and professional offices, if you refer to page 11 where it says office professional, it talks about all the things that you can,
I think that's just self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
Counting, auditing, I mean,
I love the idea of trying to define everything,
yeah, you think,
every individual one that's there.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna miss something. And somebody's gonna have to come in and get a beaver from. You're better off just to say,
business and professional offices, period.
yeah. Or just, I mean, is it
And
just,
we put a lot of things in that category when someone comes in so that it's allowed with this use. I mean, we put a lot in that. I mean, a lot of stuff that comes in front of you are different type of businesses, but they kind of fit the concept.
right?
This is not specifically allowed, it's disallowed, so it's allowed use and
This is why when they seek approval, we're like, what are all the things that you think?
Okay,
So do we want a definition or no?
I think the
Sure, I'm hearing.
consensus is not.
For business and professional office?
List the ones on page, was it
11.
11?
so if someone comes in now and they wanted to have a doctor's office, or they were gonna have a dentist, or they're gonna have a lawyer or whatever, we would put them all in that category.
Okay,
That's what we do now without a definition.
is that okay?
Whatever you guys want to do.
I think it's okay.
I'm here for you.
Sure.
We want your expert opinion.
If it was me,
It's in
if I
this
was,
board,
if
you
it
guys
was
are looking
me,
at it,
I
but-
would
Because
define everything.
those are
but
business things, right?
that's just
So
me.
I mean, it seems like an awful lot.
Well, it looks like they do
Technically,
that on the zoning
Private,
administrator side.
uh,
They include all those.
agency,
well,
and-
what
various
we sit
categories.
down together and it's like, here's what they want to do.
Detail that
What
is-
category does it fit in? We kind of,
Keeping it broad would be.
That makes sense rather than having restrictions or, right. Okay,
You want to have it as office park or keep that one with no definition as well? The business and professional park?
I think people take the general thing when you got multiple businesses in one area, it's an office park, and I think that's just looked at as a general definition.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have it defined.
Park is the
do we
length,
got?
the office is the.
business and professional offices.
I don't. Yay or nay? Whatever you guys.
What is it, what we, what do we?
Business,
Yay and a nay.
the park, the
Office-
office park, the business and professional park is listed in the table of uses. Maybe change the wording to office park.
Or have the definition of office park there.
I think when someone
Sounds like
comes
it's
in
about-
and they are proposing a
Right
business.
now,
in
we
a
have
park
business
thing,
and
we're gonna
professional
look at
park
it more
on page.
of that. If you call it an office
93.
park, we're gonna look at, so what are you putting in an office park? You know, where, if you say a business thing, we're looking at, okay, businesses are going in a park, so. I mean, as far as using it as a reasonable way when someone comes in, when you're having a discussion. I understand what Vanessa's trying to
I
do,
know,
we're
I
getting the
know, you're
definitions there, but
Don't worry, I'm not taking personally.
sometimes you can make things a little more complicated than they need to be. If you got something already simple, leave it simple.
Okay. move on.
Okay, conference centers, next
So the
one.
conference center, this was like. Yeah, venues, barn,
That's come in and
Well, because that's
Yeah.
kind of what it meets the definition of.
and I've
Mhm.
tried looking at other. But so let me make sure this is the. It talks about not overnight, and I don't think the one that we have talks about that.
Well, it just says it's not to be utilized by the general. public. It's not supposed to be. a hotel.
No, it says only utilized. That's a difference, that's important.
It's not designed.
It's not designed. So this is a different
Yeah, it should
definition
be
than what we
only.
have.
So it can have overnight guests, but it can't be only that.
Not exclusive.
Do you?
Conference center is not designed to be only utilized by the general public. Yeah,
I agree,
That's what you-
I agree.
oh,
I'm
okay,
agreeing with
you're
you.
saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess.
This
to your-
is a
to your
different
point,
definition
Joyce,
than what we have, than we currently have.
I mean, if you're allowing overnight stays, it seems to me there should be some requirement, maybe percentage wise, of space for conference space. You know what I mean?
Right.
If I got this building and I got a little small business center here, is that a conference center? Or is it a hotel? So to me, I would say, if you're gonna have a conference center, that some minimum percentage should be conference space. You can have overnight guests there, but you gotta have a conference space. It's gotta be part of your deal. Otherwise, it's not a conference room.
Right, I mean, if you look at a hotel, hotels have conference space
Yeah.
in them, but they are still a hotel.
Yeah. So to me, if you're a conference center, you could have some significant amount of space set aside for conferences.
Can you find us another definition?
I like the one we have already in our zoning, because it talks about it just being used for a conference center.
It doesn't,
talk
it
about
doesn't address it.
overnight stays at all, because if someone was gonna stay, it's like Andy said, you go to a hotel or a motel where they have conference centers in them. So keep a conference center as a conference center. I think it keeps things cleaner, because next thing you know, the barn's gonna have overnight,
Yeah,
That's why I didn't know, like, if we should,
and now you get back into your lot size zoning, hey, I've got a conference center, but I've got teen residential components now tied in that.
I think people get nervous about the name.
yeah, because right now, our conference center basically is for gathering up people and stuff like that. No overnight stays, none of that stuff.
Your hotel, a conference center.
That's in Rochester. We don't.
I know, but.
Oh, didn't you hear we're annexing that?
Yeah.
Get all that tax revenue, right?
All right, we're getting silly.
That's what you want probably your close friends.
Contractor storage yard.
Oh,
So
man.
this is like, if we wanted to update our definition or not.
The definition that's in there works well for me with zoning compliance because it allows one piece of equipment in one truck before it becomes a contracted storage yard. And that was a modification done by the board a few years back because of what constitutes a contracted storage yard and what doesn't. We have a lot of people that have a farm tractor or they got a dump truck and stuff. Is that really a contracted storage yard? That's how we come to the
They
definition.
restricted to the number of vehicles.
It's by our definition that we
Okay.
have now, and that was changed by the planning
Okay.
board. Were you on the board when we changed that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
It's
so
the
let's get
number of
them.
vehicles, but it's outside, it's not.
correct.
Right.
You could have a big old barn and pile them all in there, and that's a whole different issue.
Right. It's only by right in a regional commercial anyway, so
Yeah, but,
CP and
yeah, so,
residential.
yeah, so,
If it's that thing, if it's a contractor with a plow or something, right?
so while we're on contractor storage yard, that was one of the ones that's listed as a commercial use, which you can have as part of a mixed use development. So you say I got a contractor storage yard and now you can put 8 apartments in there. I'm just telling you what our regulation says.
Say that-
So you want to add
Right
no
now-
residential allowed?
Right
in
now,
the-
so right now, the
Okay.
mixed use says that it can be
That-
on the second floor of a commercial use. You got a
Storage yard.
contractor storage yard is listed as a commercial use. So if you got a contractor storage yard, you can have multifamily above it.
Well, do you want to add to this proposed definition that you can't have residential or something?
Wow,
It would
I
have to be
think
an
somehow
apartment
you
use.
should have it as maybe the contractor storage yard should be an industrial use or something like that. So it doesn't fit that definition of
A
a
commercial.
that mixed use structure. I guess that's where I'm going with it.
Oh, but is a
It says it's
contractor storage
industrial,
yard
though.
have anything to do with this
Yeah,
structure?
hold on. It also in commercial?
I think it's listed as a commercial use in our thing, so.
Because it talks about.
It's under industrial.
The lot.
Contractor storage and equipment yard?
Maybe it was the mixed use thing I wanted to change.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a mixed use because it says commercial.
Equipment for-
I have that note on here.
Oh, here's what it was. It says the mixed use structure, it says a building that contains dwelling units located on the ground floor, above the ground floor of an institutional, civic, office, commercial, and retail use buildings. I think we should take the institutional out of there, that definition, because all those industrial uses, go to.
Institutional.
I
not
mean, institute,
industrial.
institute, oh. Oh, it says institutional, okay, I misread that. That's where the problem is.
When we were talking about before, you said like take out the Commercial,
Oh, they're contracted, they're company.
That's industrial, so it's not allowed as part of that anyways. Cause remember when they come in with that one on the, that little loop road that goes around there, they ended up not doing anything yet. They talked about maybe having a contractor storage yard out of it
mhm.
with that there, and we, as a mixed use. They went to the ZBA and got a variance, so they got 2 units there now.
Wait, come on.
Winkley Pond, yeah.
In the tractor storage yard,
Page 75.
Second one down.
It's below the
It's not
top.
highlighted, it's not bolded.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not bold.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Unenclosed portion of the lot.
Yeah, so that's fine. I misread it wrong. For some reason, I thought it said, so if you have it as an institutional, that means you could have that mixed use over a church, municipal
Mhm.
buildings. And parks.
It specifically says the office used by the contractor as an accessory. So that's already the accessory.
Correct, but I also read it wrong when I looked at the mixed use definition. I thought it said industrial and it says institutional.
Institutional.
So we're good. I'm in an issue that doesn't exist.
I do that a lot.
Join the club.
Unfortunately. Okay, so church, we don't have a definition for. We could add that one, or if, once again, if you think it doesn't need a
Kind of
definition.
self-explanatory, right?
A lot of and childcares are going into church basements and stuff, how, and I'm not talking about, what's the name, there's one here. Big culture, but I mean, it is, there are.
Yeah, I mean, the church here has
No,
the
you say
veterans
primary.
post in the bottom of the church,
Say, right,
Primarily.
right,
Yeah,
that's good,
so
that's good.
that's solely-
So rather than sold, just say primarily.
primarily be good. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Legally established sect may run into problems with the new state law
Oh,
about
yeah.
where you can put
How
a
about we
church
don't-
in your house.
Maybe we should just not have a definition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
why
not
worry
do-
about-
what, get rid of it,
Wait.
definition.
I can turn my,
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
get tax exempt.
State law last year and planning.
I had a guy trying to live in a camper and trying to say the mobile home was a church.
And when
And
the
all
IRS
this
comes,
progression
because
has
the
come
town of
there, and he
Barrington said it
wanted
was
a
okay.
tax exemption, and I go, no, no. it's
Remember
not.
Flip Wilson?
And that'll.
Church has to meet the
Remember
place of
Flip Wilson?
assembly
You
and
know,
all
remember
kinds of
him? He was a
requirements.
black comedian. He used to do this church of the Church of Happiness or something. He had this
The
whole.
place of assembly's got a whole different criteria in the building codes.
Okay, so like distillery and brewery with retail, without retail,
All right, where are we?
no definitions for it, but it kind of sounds like some of the other. things I've gone
Distillery
to
and
that-
brewery, probably.
I mean, you. kind of know what it is.
Self-explanatory.
Yeah. Drugstore,
Same thing. I think brewery is beer and I think distillery is
They are different.
hard liquor.
they are.
Yeah, different. Well,
They're different.
yeah, beer is one.
Why
and
do you have-
hard liquor's the
Well, that's
other.
why I'm asking you, you say you use, craft use brewery, I think that, I'm saying maybe that's not right. Yes, they are different.
I know, I didn't know why they were.
Okay, you want to put distillery as a separate one under the Ds? Is that what you want to do? Do we have that? I guess we do.
I mean, I'm okay with them being together
Still.
for the purposes of
Yeah,
regulation, but you say perhaps utilize brewery as definition, and I'm saying
oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
that may not be, if they're different, then maybe that's not.
There's no definition for distillery, but there's a definition for brewery.
I think if the language, we have to be careful to use that language for the distillery.
I have a
That's my
question.
point.
Does anybody know any distillery or brewery at this point that does some retail component?
All the microbrews now, that's what it's all about.
It's
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a combination.
And they probably serve food too.
Drugstore
Or they have a,
definition,
right.
yeah.
A gun range.
You guys are getting silly.
One of those has a gun range.
Beer and gun.
An axe throw.
Beer and guns.
Beer, guns and axes.
Go together.
What can go wrong?
All right. So
It's
that-
New
at least
Hampshire,
wear the
throw
safety
some fireworks
goggles.
as well, and we're all set to go.
Added to the definition.
Educational institution.
Self-explanatory.
So this is where I didn't know if it was self-explanatory or not, because, for example, wildlife encounters, that's what they came in as an educational institution. I know that they do programming and stuff, but they
Right.
also have people coming, so I don't know. So I thought maybe we should have a definition for it.
Because this definition does not include trade or business. Okay, last time I checked it, college.
Yeah,
Oh,
junior
probably a
college.
separate-
Oh, the definition does not.
It says university.
Not include-
University.
But there is a difference between
Junior college.
See,
Or
Two
university.
different, there were two different, definitions.
But it says definition does not include trade or business.
Other than trade or business schools, how come those are,
discrimination.
it is.
Yeah, that, it's a.
Blue
It's
collar
blue
should be
collar people.
supported. We need more contractors, right?
We do. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I would like that.
Or include trade and business school.
Mm-hmm.
We call it heating plants, but fine.
Farm stands.
So.
Oh, boy.
Farm
Let's
stands.
again, hang on, I'm backing up again, with or without living quarters.
The farm stand?
No, education. No, he's getting funny.
Wants to move along.
Just, as soon as I get into, now you're getting into dormitory style housing. So that's sort of like.
Heating plants, I mean, come on, they're gonna have water facilities, showers. I mean, how much can you add to these things?
Couldn't we just
Yeah,
not even have that last part?
yeah, I agree. Let's,
Thank you.
Sure.
Sounds like.
Everybody is reading the farm stand definition.
Oh, good. Okay.
Want more?
You're sleeping. Yeah,
I know.
me too.
I think it's RSA, was it 21? A or B? 2133 A and B or something like that. It describes agricultural use and it talks about the farm stands and how it's allowed. So I think it actually describes that it was selling of the product to where 35% comes from,
Exactly.
correct, from.
On-site,
from
on-site.
On-site.
Yeah.
So I think that is actually a better definition than going through all of this.
Yes.
I-
That 35% was really problematic.
No, it's RSA.
It's actually, it's in the state law.
But still, but I think it's problematic.
Farm roadside stand.
Well, I think that
Was it,
for definition
You
of
find it?
agricultural, I agree with problem.
because it talks about 35% of the product comes from it or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
So if you use that definition as a farm stand, then I think you're complying with the
I'll just put
agricultural
RSA.
use.
well, before
Yeah.
you go there, John, I think I agree with you on that. But, what about, I put a farm, like, what was it, the place down the road there that they put a farm stand over there. It's for the temporary one. They had a farm stand.
Or are you talking about?
It wasn't an agricultural zone, it wasn't a agricultural business, but they whacked up a farm stand once in a while. And I think people like that. It didn't survive, but they didn't like enough to actually buy stuff there,
What are
but.
you talking about? The one that was-
Oh, the one
Across
that
the
was,
theater?
yeah, the one that was, yeah, okay. So they came in on that one there. They had a display area that was part of the approval, so they set up in that as part of that thing where they could sell it, because when that hardware store went in, they were in there for that. That was that.
Fiddleheads.
Oh, Fiddleheads from Dover, right?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fit on.
So let's say I want to do a temporary farm, you wanted to do a farm stand at one point, didn't you, Donna?
Yeah, I went for, what did I go for?
If you came in for like a retail operation,
A market.
A farmer's market.
yeah,
I guess my question is, to me, a farm stand on an agriculturally zone piece of property is different than a temporary one that goes up on the weekend
Mhm.
somewhere else.
When people
And
have
we-
enough produce in their garden.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the businesses that go there on a heavily traveled highway to try to sell their stuff.
So that would come in as a retail use, I think, by our definition. So they would still come for site review for a retail use, even if they're selling an agricultural product. It's still just a retail establishment at that point in time.
Okay. So it's not, it's, even though it's selling farm goods, it's not a farm stand per se.
Correct.
Okay, got it,
That's,
got it. Okay, I agree with the 35%, and I still have a problem with this because we have not defined. John tried to lead us there, but we didn't get there. What constitutes an agricultural business? We still haven't done that, and we need to do that.
Right, and then what you sent us talked about overnight stays.
that was part of that change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually section E on that same section, I think, is where they talk about like a bread and breakfast type thing that they, I think it was like last year or the year before, the state adopted that.
Yeah.
See,
you
here's the
can-
killer part.
But it had to be like educational, so you had to put a flyer
It had-
from the farm. in the
Right, so,
overnight.
and that's that same idea as like when the Peach Orchard come in to have that conference
They
center.
have a
It was still
definition of
supposed to be a
agriculture.
primary agricultural use in order to stay under that agricultural use, but you could have that as, you know, learning activity and stuff from.
And overnight guests are allowed under
Right.
the new statute too.
But my point is, if I have a piece of property and I have a little garden,
It's primary, yeah.
we both work somewhere else, but I got a little garden.
Yeah.
In my agricultural business, I can now, at some point,
It's a farm, you could put a farm stand down.
no, you couldn't. To me, it's gotta be an agricultural business. We haven't defined that, but we have to.
If you grew them on your own property, you're allowed to put a stand sign up to sell your stuff by state law. That's
Right,
what this.
right, but in my agricultural business, with all the other things that are allowed as an agricultural business. I have my little garden. I sell vegetables. Am I an agricultural business or I have a little garden?
Or a farm stand.
Yeah.
I'm not a farm stand. If
Yeah.
to me,
If you're selling your own product on at your property, you're a farm stand by that
okay, but
definition.
my agricultural business, my agricultural business, is my property agricultural?
No, it doesn't say it has to be. It just says that the product has to be produced by you on your
Right.
property.
It could be cottage food.
But it's
which
allowed in agri-
Allows
that's
up to
reduced in
$70,000 a year.
Correct.
So do I have to be agricultural in order to do that?
I don't think so.
No,
I think if you had 6 chickens in your backyard and you had extra eggs and you wanted to sell them at your farm stand, you have a right to. Even if you're in a residential neighborhood.
Get a permit.
No,
and if you have a cottage kitchen, which means it's not regulated state kitchen, you can produce food without regulations or a license up to $70,000 a year.
if we're gonna get into trying to
Making
define
jams,
truly what
jellies,
an
or
agricultural
bu-
thing is, we need a whole meeting all in
breads
that
or
one
anything.
alone.
So your
You can
cat
sell 'em
can
right
jump on
in
the
your front
counter and
yard.
Walk all over and you can still can it up.
I mean,
I don't know how much further we're gonna get here.
Well,
Well,
the
but-
cat keeps the mice down, so they don't run across the counter.
But you know,
Okay.
That way what, you think your chocolate chips are actually chocolate chips in your.
Funeral home. Gives
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
brings back in here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the agriculture is a good idea, but I think it's just, we don't have enough time in this meeting to do
Yeah.
that.
I agree with that.
Get rid of that guy, okay. Funeral homes, kind of self-explanatory.
Funeral homes, I have one quick question.
Mhm.
It says performance of autopsies and other surgical procedures. That seems pretty broad to me. It should be,
Yeah.
it should be, you know.
Talking
Want a
about-
hysterectomy? Stop in.
Exactly. I mean, it should be related to.
Wow, okay.
The camera
It's-
pointing
it's
at
still-
The whole B or the surgical procedure?
I mean,
The whole
Okay.
key, because even autopsies wouldn't be completed at the funeral home. They're gonna be done
Sure.
in Concord.
Sure, okay. That was weird.
They all done, I don't, yeah, they're all done.
And probably not a facility for cremation. That's probably-
Cremation is usually
A lot of times.
separate license for that.
That's it, that's
A
it.
lot of times
That's
it's
a
in a
whole
funeral
new
home, so
thing.
they do it.
Yeah.
Oh, they did?
A lot of them have it,
Oh.
especially the older ones.
Where you see that where people.
Then you have to
Yeah.
watch the resulting venting of,
Well, that's state, there's regulations for that.
yeah.
Okay,
They got scrubbers in place now for that.
Well, how do we know if we got a new pump?
golf course.
Let me ask a question here on this one, Vanessa. Are these? Are all these paragraphs different suggestions? Are they?
Yes,
Okay,
I should have separated more, but yes,
okay. So you want us to pick one of these paragraphs?
yes.
An area of course for playing golf consisting of at least 9 holes except miniature golf. That sounds like one good
Or we could
definition.
just not at all. I don't know.
Well,
I
but
think people pretty much know what a golf course is without actually. putting a definition in there.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, I like the first one, except I would say can include a golf, I think to me, you can have a golf course without having a clubhouse.
Yep.
So I would say, and can include a clubhouse and shelters as accessories in May. There you go. May's even better,
Golf course may.
rather than required to include.
All right, man.
Grocery store.
We buy groceries.
There you go. But not big stores, obviously. At least 5,000, but not more than 25,000. That would be more of a Trader Joe's thing, right? Not a Demoulas at 100,000 square feet.
Why would limit it to, why is that limit
Yeah.
in there?
I don't know.
Why is it limited on the low side too? Like you look
It
at.
comes from out of,
A mom and pop
Paper.
store, why not let them come in if they sell groceries?
Yeah.
George Kale sells some
That's not
stuff.
5,000 square feet.
Not even close.
are they considered a grocery store? Even
They
though
sell
they
groceries in there.
groceries?
Yeah.
Sandwich
Sell
place?
groceries?
Sandwich shop.
All I think is
Sells meat.
sandwiches.
Sandwich.
I go there. Sandwich shop.
Does it sell groceries?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the shelf, yeah, I guess those are groceries. I think of,
Maybe we should just not have a definition. of it.
Yeah, it's pretty
No difference.
self-explanatory.
Ron just never gets any farther than your eye.
I go to the sub place, I go to the sub place. I have my, my Caleb card, looking to fill it in.
Hardware store.
A free one.
I mentioned the square.
I mean, the
Well,
first one.
Guess we're not gonna get a Home Depot.
What's the Home Improvement Center.
We won't do one. for that one.
Hardware stores, okay.
Okay, going back to health, or not going back, but healthcare facility.
I don't know.
I guess the pain clinic would be a healthcare facility, right?
First one seems way too detailed.
I like the second one.
Why does it need anything more than the sentence? Any facility, place or building maintained and operated by medical.
Oh, the second paragraph is pretty good. I like the second paragraph. I like that one.
That's what I'm saying.
What do you mean? the whole-
Operated, provide medical care, period.
Just one line.
I would change it to healthcare. Healthcare is broader,
It is healthcare.
long-term care.
It is healthcare, choice.
Right.
It is healthcare.
No, it says medical care.
Any facility.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay, I
definition
got
for
it, got it.
healthcare facility though.
Paragraph 2,
So
we like.
Okay.
if we're going with it with healthcare, when they approve marijuana, like our shop will be okay with that? I just want to think about all the places that I can open.
Look it up, baby.
Yep.
Well,
Okay,
then,
health club.
Okay. Members and non-members use
I
equipment. or
don't know why it
space.
says members or non-members. Why
Oh,
is that? What does that say?
Facility where people use equipment.
If you're dropping, you drop in to do like yoga or something, you're not necessarily a member, you're dropping.
Yeah, but you could just change it to people.
Sure.
yeah, that's great.
We're people.
A facility use of physical.
Sounds good.
Okay, just to be a pain in the butt. If you go back to your healthcare facilities, gives you note 3, which limits it to 15 beds. Why are we even describing the number of beds in a healthcare facility? The one you just did, if you go to your
So take
table
out
of
three.
uses,
Table, yeah,
it says that it's a permitted.
Page
use in the regional
94.
Commercial, but it's limited to the number of beds, but it only does it in the regional commercial. It doesn't do it in the other districts.
So take out the note is what you're saying.
I'm just saying, why is the three, is there a reason for limiting the number of beds in a healthcare facility? The way that description of the healthcare facility that you guys just
Oh,
brought
because
forward doesn't
nursing
even
home.
have beds. So
And
why are you
everything.
limiting the number of beds?
Well, we are talking about assisted living and stuff like that in hospitals. If you're a healthcare facility, it's urgent care, stuff like that. I don't see you having beds.
I know, I'm just saying that's what's listed right now in our table of
They
uses.
have
Yeah.
beds.
So right now it says, note 3. If you go to note 3, it says 15 patients or clinical beds is a limit in the regional commercial.
Yeah.
But your healthcare facility, the definition you just adopted doesn't have anything with that. So why are you putting the number of, limit the number of beds in it?
Right.
when you don't
particularly
even
just
talk
that
about
one
beds?
regional commercial.
Because you have it in your table of uses, so you don't specifically spell it out in your definition. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it in my definition, I'd put it in my table of uses.
So I'm gonna look at that and say, now I can put beds in my thing, even though it's not as allowed by the definition?
Which one are you talking, the
Healthcare
Healthcare
facilities.
Facility,
Well,
yeah.
we didn't specify beds, we said any facility, place. or-
No, our table of
The
uses
table
now
of yours
kicks you
currently
to
has
note
it.
3. Note 3 limits the number of beds. So why are you limiting the number of beds when you're not even allowing beds?
Which page is this?
It's, page
94.
94. So if you go at the top, it says healthcare
Healthcare
facilities.
facilities.
Go to across the regional commercial, it gives you note 3. Turn it to the next page to note 3. And it
And that's
says,
15.
such facilities may have no more than 15 patients or clinical beds.
Didn't you guys already vote to nix that and I was the only no?
No, but I mean, why, no, we nixed the note 3 with the stuff that had to do with assisted living and the elderly living thing. We took it out of those. You're not gonna have note 3. Unless you're gonna take note 3 completely out of the whole thing. So anything that's listed as note 3 in here no longer applies.
I think that's what
Well, let me stay with this. I think we can fix that.
well, we
John,
didn't.
by saying, but no overnight care.
No, but I mean, why even have the note 3? What I'm saying is take
note
take
3
the
out.
3 right out of the table of uses.
But we
Define
left it
as-
in for elderly assisted care homes in
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
3 districts.
but what I'm saying is right now, when you go across healthcare facilities and you got permitted use with
Yep.
a note 3, just cross the 3 out
Yeah.
now. So that it doesn't refer you to the beds.
Okay, I thought you meant get rid of.
No,
three
I meant take
totally.
it off that
No,
little
3
line, just
for
that one
healthcare
line.
facility.
Done. Good.
In,
In. Got number of lodging rooms and 20 guest rooms and not more than 3 and up to 20 guest rooms. Multiple
why an
unit
inn
bed
is
with
in-
more than
like
3.
hotel and.
So
Again, the Riviera.
It's not a bed and breakfast.
No.
No, it's just for overnight stays.
Yeah, but it says.
Maybe we
meals-
should take
meals-
out the
for
guest
Overnight,
rooms.
overnight lodging and meals are provided for cons.
Yeah.
The problem I have with that is a lot of places now give you breakfast for free. It's part of the. it's
Right.
Part of the.
Yeah.
Nothing at the
rate.
breakfast type thing, yeah.
Yeah,
You have the compensation as you paid for your room.
but it says.
These are providing,
lodging And meals.
these are
are
providing
provided
3
for-
meals a
for
day.
Compensation.
Right.
So,
So you're paying for your room and you're getting free breakfast. You're compensating them for it.
Whether you eat or not.
Right.
we want to put, it on guest rooms, one of these says 5 or 3.
one says 10.
So that could be,
Yeah.
two, husband, wife. And, that's,
It says here 20.
oh, guest rooms, yeah.
The next paragraph down says
This
10
one's
lodging
10,
rooms.
so I
So
don't know.
there's more than one option here.
Yeah, each line is a separate option.
Would you like better, yours 10 or 20?
There's 3 options. There's 3 options.
Which one you like, 10?
10,
Yeah, the 10 one looks good.
and it's not huge. I mean, 20 is big.
I think 20 is-
For a year.
For an inn?
Rooms? This is rooms, not guests.
I like the Independence Inn up in Stratford. I don't know. how many
Well,
rooms they
we
have
have
there.
definitions for hotels and stuff like that, right? We got, this is an inn, this is not a
Yeah,
hotel.
right, exactly.
We got another definition for
hotel?
hotels. I think 10's a good number for
We
me.
do have hotel.
I think we're coalescing on 10, Vanessa.
10. Like the third
Yeah.
sentence down
Yeah,
or just
the
10 in
building.
general?
You want that whole sentence?
Oh, well, I kind of like excluding resident manager quarters, stuff like that. I like that phrase.
Okay,
10 guest rooms excluding resident quarters, resident manager quarters.
Which contains,
and you want to leave in where inn includes the terms guest house, lodging house, or tourist house? Or is that not that part?
I guess,
over here, an
I-
existing structure compensating only prearranged.
I don't like through a lobby necessarily, but I mean, we need a lobby. I mean, it can be just like a.
There could be side doors and not all rooms would be necessarily.
So now is he talking about this one?
Yeah,
So
I
this
guess
one or
I
this
was.
one?
You're talking about starting with a building which contains a dwelling unit occupied by the owner. and
Or the
resident
existing
manager.
structure one.
Yeah, but I'm
That's what-
saying of the 10, right there, it says excluding the resident manager's quarters. So I'm saying don't include of the 10
Oh,
10 guest rooms, specifically exclude the resident manager's quarters as one of the guest rooms.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just clarifying that, the guy who's.
I
living
thought he
there
was
as
on the one
president
above.
was not one of the guest rooms.
I see. You like the idea of the owner. Did you
Okay,
want the
got it.
owner?
President manager.
Okay.
Nursery.
Great nursery. Nursery.
Well, it says there's landscape nurseries and greenhouses. Is what we have.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I like 3 too.
Establishment
Yep.
or growth display. Machine shop.
Well, I mean, and/or sale, I mean, if it's gonna be a business, you gotta sell it, right? And sale of, I mean, and/or, I mean, you're
I
gonna,
think he's still back up. at
Oh,
nursery.
sorry.
Well, you could not throw it, but sell it. And really, it's a retail location.
well,
Anybody.
an establishment for the growth and display. And sale, I don't know what.
I don't know why it
I'm
said
questioning the
or.
I'm questioning the or.
Got that or.
I don't know why it says and,
Yeah, it shouldn't say the or is.
the or is confusing me. I'm easily confused, but it's confusing me.
Shops. Mm,
So I would, just so you folks are aware, where it says other wood and metal machines are used, I wouldn't limit it to wood and metal. I would actually just strike that right out.
Okay,
Other machines, maybe
King machinery.
Fabricating machines,
used. Okay.
fabrication machines.
And I say that because when you look at additive technology, whether it's polycarbonates, whether
Yep.
it's electrochemical machining, there's a whole bunch of different methods that fit under.
this is more reductive machining as opposed to additive, right?
What's that?
This definition probably lingers from reductive
You
machining.
should, probably should be open to that.
Yeah, should be 3D, can be
3D
3D
printers.
stuff,
We should-
right?
We should include 3D printers in this. That's becoming
I don't
increasingly
think
common
you
for.
need to specify that part of it. I would
Yeah,
just
get
say
rid of blacksmith, tinsmith and all that
Mhm.
old stuff.
What you're really referring to is the king forming or changing any such material.
Material. Yeah.
Well, raw material, I don't know if I would use the material because sometimes a machine shop of any shape could take a part that has already been partially processed at one area and then use for further operation in another.
But it was processed where,
Well, like a block of aluminum, for example, right? And then you're gonna reduce it to your part. I
Well,
think that
like,
was
for example, we would have, like, I have my Rochester plant.
Right.
That does the preliminary from a forging, turns it to a rough turn, which then ships it over to our Dover plant or our Barrington plant where there we actually create, like, do the flow path process of it.
but that first process was done in where,
Rochester.
but what is it? What was it in?
So at that point, it's a forging.
So it's a forging shop, it's not.
It'd be machine
No,
shop
it's a
too.
machine shop,
Okay.
but it starts, so there's like a raw process, then there's a forging process. So it goes from like a foundry. So it'll go from a foundry then to potentially a forging plant and then from there to,
The forgery plant. Yeah, it melts down, it does the.
depending on the type of
Forging
material.
console. You're thinking of, you're thinking of a casting plant, but it's the same thing. Let's say you do,
Yeah, that's
let's
what
say
I'm
you
talking
have a sand casting, you make a piece. It goes somewhere else to be drilled and stuff and it goes somewhere else to be drilled and, you know, they find.
Okay, yeah, that's strike. the road.
Yeah, what's the more general language?
Yeah,
It seems
let's
like
do-
this is very
Yeah,
specific.
general and less common. Put in instead
I
of.
would get more into where the formation or additive or subtractive change of a
Material.
material is, I'd have to think about exactly how you would word it.
So with that definition, right now, it's not allowed in the town center or the village district. So if you got something that's all contained and that's in a business area there, would you say that you should change that to allow that to be like a conditional use? Because especially if it's
I
gonna be,
would, I mean,
So I'll give you guys a very perfect example of that, all into the realm of machine shop. Is if you have somebody that makes like those wooden signs, technically it would fall under the definition of a machine shop because they're using lathes, presses, grinders, shapers to make those signs and then they display them and sell them. Right there is like, you know, and there has the town with the latitude coordinates or.
Just routers too.
Yeah, those are all.
well, a better example is Wade Bob. Let's say you have somebody opens a business with 3D printers.
Yep.
We're not gonna allow that in town center.
that's why I'm saying, because right now it's not allowed. Because, so if you change that definition, you might want to allow it in those two districts. That's the.
I would say conditional use, but. I
Yeah,
wouldn't-
conditional
I wouldn't
use,
allow
yeah.
it, but conditional
Because
use.
right now they're not allowed at all in the
I'd
town
go
center and the
conditional use.
village.
It's not allowed.
Machine shops.
I'll go conditional use.
Actually, town center wasn't, village was a conditional use.
All right.
But I mean, if you had a small business thing set up where they were doing this little machining, why would you not allow it in the town center?
You know, we allow home businesses to do that kind of stuff.
3D printing, you can do ceramic printing where you actually, I could cast a mold of Ron's head and make it look just like Ron.
I would want it to look better than me.
I'll buy one of those.
I've seen some flower pots like that.
Yeah.
It's all.
Chia pets.
Chia
it's all-
pets.
Why am I being picked on for this? I can guess why I'm being picked on,
Okay.
but I don't wanna, I'm not gonna mention it.
You know, just pop it up.
All right, movie theater?
I got one.
This seems
That's
Awfully
self-explanatory, isn't it?
Sure.
specialized theater for showing movies or motion pictures. That seems like enough to me.
Me too.
Yeah,
I mean, they do parties and everything at some of them now, but I get involved in that.
But okay,
Kiddie
so-
parties and
some of them serve beer.
birthdays.
But they have parties, they show the movies for the party.
Mhm.
That's what they do. Even though it's a party,
Yeah,
it's a
some,
private event,
The
they still
primary-
show movies.
right,
some
primary
serve food
is-
and beer
I don't see.
right to your table, your seat.
So no definition, right?
We're done.
I think the sentence alone, I think the sentence is gonna.
First sentence.
Per
Oh,
sentence,
just
so we-
percent, okay.
Yeah, just, that's enough.
I'm not talking about the sparks anymore.
Mm.
sawmill. I know we need that.
UD definition.
Yeah, at the top, are we still looking at PUDs?
It was kind of like the solar thing. We could just say, see Article 16.
Okay. I'll buy that.
Sort of.
Publishing and printing establishments.
Do they exist?
I feel like that could go on an emission.
Not as much as they used to.
'Cause that could be 3D printing. Maybe.
Could be printing. I know
considered
you do
printing?
3D printing. for printing.
Right. Braille.
Still, yeah, we still-
We got the sound guy
we
up
don't
there,
do 3D,
right?
we Use a foil.
Up the road here, Atlantic, in the Atlantic place. He'd be printing,
That's printing, it's not 3D.
printing signs.
I mean, when we
Oh.
have our,
One under my machine shop.
yeah, well, the thing is, when we do the, what are those little books we get out every year for that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Those go to a
Town
printer,
report.
yeah, the town report, those all go to a printer and stuff like that, so it's not like the establishments don't exist. And if someone wanted to come in and set up a print shop, why would you, you know,
Yeah,
Most of them are laser
But where do you go for that, John? You probably go to Staples.
You probably go to Staples someplace like
oh, they
that.
got, those are like a regular printing company they go to.
It's only printing, that's all they do?
I think so, the one that the
Really?
town brings.
The town report.
So, and most of those, I don't know if any of you have ever seen like printing institutions work. They're either laser printed or printed on giant sheet roll process, and then they sheared and then bound on the other side of it.
I've seen it, but.
So sawmill.
Sawmill. Yep, thank you. Want to have additional?
I mean,
It could be a portable one too, like one of my neighbors had one.
but we can have a facility here with sawmills.
No, so what happens is those little portable sawmills, a
Right.
lot of them, the portable ones,
Yeah.
they're just doing their own stuff in their own yard.
Yep.
So therefore, it's kind of an agricultural use because they're they're processing their own product. So the only time a sawmill would come in is if someone's having logs hauled in and they're sawing them up. The odds of a commercial type sawmill coming to town is probably pretty slim.
Yeah, an actual facility,
Yeah.
a fixed facility. It's not gonna happen. You put those where the logs are, and it ain't here. You
And
know,
there's enough other ones close by, no one's gonna open a new one. And those little portable sawmills, those are really not a site review type.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
sawmill-
someone could say, I'm gonna start hauling logs in and making stuff, and they would have to come for site review because of how our regulation's written. But if a guy's sawing up his own stuff in his own property, he doesn't have to, because that's just added value of his agricultural product.
We're talking about a facility. No one's gonna do a facility in Barrington. Land's too expensive, there's not enough logs. Close.
So we're just deleting this one.
I don't think we need
Just leave it at, without explanation, so,
Yeah. Undefined.
okay. Social or fraternal organizations, like the Veterans Post and the Lions, they have Lions in
I like the term
Barrington.
organization. I think it's a pretty good description right there.
Yeah, I think so.
Fraternity, whether we wanted to have a fraternity for UNH
Mhm.
there.
Right.
We wanted fraternities here in Barrington. I don't think so.
Or a sorority.
They can move into your AUD.
There you go.
Okay, so take it out. Swimming pool, I don't feel like it really needs definition after. doing
No.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
Terminal truck.
Truck terminal.
I mean,
That's a
I mean,
truck about to die.
yeah, so a lot of trucks like that.
Truck terminal, huh?
I mean, I kind of like the first one was good to me.
So it's, by right in regional commercial and CP and highway. Otherwise not allowed.
Odds of one of them coming to town are pretty slim.
Yeah, I guess you wanted, the first one or the last one are different. And I guess I'm asking the question, which one do you think is better? The first one allows for storage The second one kind of limits storage. Or we can, what we can go with John and say, none, don't need it.
Just let somebody come in. Requested as a. additional permit.
Yeah, as John said, it's not gonna happen, so.
Yes, actually, if we look at it, what's it? It's allowed in the regional commercial and it's conditional use in the highway commercial overlay. So
Okay,
you
so
want to
it's-
take, put a CP on the regional commercial too and still have it disallowed in all the other districts?
Yeah, but-
Okay,
But if it's allowed, we should have a definition for it then.
I would just make it a condition.
Yeah, the
Still
one that's in the
define-
regional
still define
commercial.
what it is.
Yeah, it should.
okay, add
Still define what it
CP
is.
to
I like the first.
regional
sentence.
commercial.
I mean, if you're gonna have a terminal, you're gonna store kids there. I mean, you can't.
So number one is or like the
Yeah,
first.
first sentence.
They're gonna sell diesel fuel at Mobile. We were told there's gonna be hookers hanging out there when I was on the planning board. I'm just telling you what people coming down telling us.
So,
What are your observations? Yes or no?
Soon as someone said they're selling diesel fuel, next thing you know, we're gonna have hookers in all the trucks.
Sure, you can't trust those truck drivers.
They didn't get the diesel, but we got the hookers.
Warehouse operation.
We need more hookers for those terminal trucks.
Oh, geez.
You gotta count them in at home, so someone's got a dome. Where are we?
Warehouse operations. This is definitely want to add a CP in the village district.
Even one in the village district.
Well, I don't want them. We want to delete it. I'll go with that. Any people that want them in the village district?
And why would you want a warehousing operation in your general residential and your neighborhood residential?
We'll get rid of them there too. Okay,
Okay, now your regional commercial is permitted. You want to do a conditional use on that one probably?
probably.
If we're gonna go with the definition, I like the second paragraph better.
Conditional use permit in the
See here.
regional commercial.
Well, a use
Regional
occasion-
commercial will go into CP. And delete it for,
All the other ones,
yeah,
everything.
well, it's CP already in,
Oh.
the-
you're deleting it for village too, right?
Yeah,
yep.
Village and
yep, village. Deleting it for general residential, neighborhood residential, village, town center, CP in regional and CP in highway overlay. Is that okay?
second def.
All right.
New section.
Well, are we going with definition on that though?
Yeah, she did yours.
Oh, you said the
Oh,
first
okay,
one?
okay.
Yeah,
No, I took the second one.
or, that's
Oh.
what I meant, second one.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Hey, page
New
14.
definition. We talked about maybe. I had a note that to look at their frontage definition.
Oh,
We don't have one.
oh,
These are all new definitions that we don't have. That we may want to look at. I had a note. We talked about it on, I can't remember which meeting, but one of the meetings to look, see if there's a better definition for frontage.
you like 200-foot frontage, something.
Like, what does frontage mean?
Right now, it says the length of a lot line abutting a class 5 highway or other road about which buildings can be lawfully built is what we have in our definition right now.
Mhm.
It's the
Is there
same.
anything else
the
that we
same.
want to add to it?
Well, the frontage definition we have now says the frontage is with where there's more than one option with a vehicle entrance. We have
Well,
vehicle
no,
entrance.
because we do, that's the corner lot. So if you go to that one there, I have to apply both of them as frontage for setback purposes is what it says. Because that's what I've been doing.
No, there's one that said, there's one that's on that says, whichever way the vehicles come in. I remember that, because remember the one way on 125? The guy wanted to access from both sides, wasn't a corner lot, it was front and back. He wanted to use frontage from the 125, but the vehicle access was coming in from the back. I don't know, but it's the one right behind where the guy, the one that
Yeah.
had the dumpsters on, that's that road.
Mhm.
The frontage is,
This road? This road.
frontage is defined from where you get vehicle access. That's in our regulation somewhere, John, somewhere. I'm not gonna tell you where, but I know it's somewhere. Cause that was a one of the Zoom meeting ones. I remember. It was good, cause I'm rummaging. I think frontage is defined. I was rummaging through when I found it. And it specifically says wherever the vehicles, wherever you're having the vehicles access to the
Hmm.
property, that's where your frontage is. Somewhere. Let me try, probably look.
What's different from the existing definition?
It's not, that's the point I'm trying to make.
I know, I
There's
was,
gotta be something
we were
else.
gonna add something else to it. Cause there was,
In this case, in that one that, Ron was talking about, they had frontage on
What?
125 and frontage on Pierce.
Pierce Road, yeah.
No, they were defining their frontage as 125, when it should have been taken from the,
Pierce
the,
Road.
the Pierce Road.
Right, but, they could, the problem, I think the problem there was the setback.
The setback was 75 feet. It was not room enough for the
They
house.
had a requirement, right, to meet the setback on 125, and then,
And on Pierce Road.
right, but I thought they were trying to claim their frontage on Pierce Road because they weren't coming in off 125.
No, they're trying to claim the frontage on 125, because the setback was 125, and they were trying to not have frontage on the Pierce Road, even though that's where they're getting
But
vehicle
we were
access.
arguing their access was coming from Pierce Road, so they're.
And I will, our lot frontage says, must be the side of the parcel used to provide vehicular access to the property.
Right.
That's what ours says right now, and that's the right way to do it. John, it's 4.1.2.
On page 81,
It's on page 15.
page 81, lot line front, a property line divided by a lot where a street right away from which the vehicle access is provided to the lot.
Page 15.
15 in zoning, you got another?
Yep.
So I mean, I'm talking the definition here is in,
I'm telling you, it's different.
I'm just saying, we got the same document, it's just different places.
Yeah, well, 4.1.2.
Lot frontage.
Then we got a definition on page 81. There's lot and then frontage. And then you got frontage, a definition on page 78. So we got three different definitions of zoning. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I will tell you, I like the ones, the vehicle access one is the one I prefer.
But I mean, we still have to have a definition. It should, so the definition should just match.
Yeah, I
But do
agree.
you want to do it as frontage or do you want to do it as lot frontage? Because that's where, because they got frontage and they have a definition, then they give lot frontage another definition.
I guess my point is 4.1.2, that definition of frontage is the one I like, I think is the right one.
Okay.
And I think.
So where that says lot frontage, I think we should do away with the definition that says frontage. And then where it says lot frontage, have a definition that basically mirrors that.
Yeah.
Because you got frontage and then lot frontage, it's the same thing. So why would you have it?
Yeah, we have to.
See 4.1
Because frontage and lot frontage
Two.
actually says the same thing, almost word for word.
place.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna delete frontage,
Delete frontage.
frontage.
Delete frontage.
Yeah, because right now the thing lot frontage says the property line dividing a lot from a street right away from which the vehicle access is provided to the lot. That's the definition we have now, which pretty much mirrors that thing in 4.1.2.
And we're good.
Good.
Good, delete frontage.
How'd you guys work through it? I didn't know what my note meant. Frontage. Funeral chapel. It's usually accompanying a funeral home, but.
We just have chapel, not chapel.
Or we don't, you can take out funeral chapel too. This is just proposing a new definition because it usually,
Would we put
Goes with
chapel
it.
as part of the allowed uses as funeral home? And then just have chapel, because chapel, churches sometimes can kind of, be multifunctional,
Mhm.
weddings,
You could add chapel to the church definition.
We took out the church definition.
Perfect.
Those are the
You know.
Because once again, the funeral
Halloween.
chapel is used for the performance of autopsies.
Oh, my God.
And embalming.
Shall not. Shall not. It should not.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I think I would add chapel as a accessory use of a funeral home. And then just leave it alone.
Like not its own definition, you mean?
Are you a Wiccan?
I don't know why that's relevant.
See these fires
that's
going
fine.
up down by the lake. I was wondering.
Street frontage. I don't know if we need to have that since, I don't know.
That's what we just got done discussing.
We just, yeah, basically.
Get rid of that.
Okay, here's going to the shed definition.
Uh-oh.
Oh, definition, I mean, this is the one that I want to limit the number of sheds. So definition is one thing, but
How about limiting the size? John said at one time it was 120 feet.
Yeah, so what happens is it used to be 120 square feet in the building code to where a shed didn't need a building permit. And at that time, we had 120 foot square sheds were exempt from setbacks. Well, the building code changed and they allowed up to 200 square feet without a building permit. So when Tom Abbott came to us when I was on the planning board, said that changed, we changed the whole thing to where the setbacks didn't have to be 200 square feet too. So no one's complained yet, but it's almost like the building permit's not required for up to 200 square feet, but it doesn't mean you could do the ones that don't have to meet setback at 120 still if you wanted to. You wouldn't necessarily have to keep it at 200, like it used to be.
So instead of putting a fence up in my yard, I could put a series of sheds along that.
Correct.
that's what I'm saying. We should limit the number of sheds.
Remember before you talked about, what was it, 1 per acre or something like that?
No, 2 plus an additional 1.
I had one in for 2.
Maybe that's
and
what-
you had one put in
I had
for
2
whatever.
1 per additional, but I also wanted to add storage units, enclosed trailers, campers, you shouldn't be allowed to have a shed, a storage unit, a camper, an enclosed trailer. There should be some limit on,
But
maybe
those are
2's not
licensed
enough, but-
vehicles.
Fine.
Those are all licensed
Well,
vehicles.
camper is not a motorized vehicle. I'm talking about camper, not an RV. I'm talking
No, but a
about,
camper
Like a
still gets
pop-up,
registered.
like a pop-up
Camper's
trailer.
still registered.
about, a pop-up, but.
Yeah,
Something
something that's not motorized. Yeah.
The tow with a fifth wheel or something.
But if it's
Something big.
registered,
It's
Big.
registered.
it's registered.
Yeah, it's
Classified
registered.
under the automobile side of it.
So you won't allow that?
If you have a registered vehicle, you have a right to keep it on your lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, then we talked.
No,
sheds.
the only ones you can't, is
Sheds
this
and searches.
subdivision back here, because they put it in their protective covenants, that you can't keep a camper on the lot.
Okay, so then we did limit sheds and storage units.
So you just spent $800,000 and you get a storage place for your camper.
Right, so
HOA
that's
can
why you
raise-
rent one of the garages in the front.
I was suggesting reducing the size to 180 feet, so that would discount.
Well, the 200 square feet for the building permit would stay, because that's in the building code.
Right.
So you're talking the setback requirement would change, not the building permit requirement.
But right now, you don't have
Have
to go meet
setbacks.
setback for sheds, do you?
Right now.
If
there's
it's
no-
under 200.
Under 200. So it used to be 120. When the building code changed to where you could do 200 without a building permit, we changed it so that you could go up to 200 square feet without having to meet setbacks.
But why,
So John would think that maybe we should have something smaller than 200 that's exempt from setbacks. So if, let's say you.
Would
wanted to-
also mean.
Let's say you wanted to do a 10 by 20 shed, you would have to meet setbacks. But if you did a 10 by 12 shed, you wouldn't have to.
I wasn't so concerned about sheds, but this would negate by right the putting a shipping container on your property.
But shipping containers usually come.
Right
10 by
now,
20.
they could do it without any permissions. But if you made it, because they're 10 by 20, so 200 feet. If you made it 180, they'd have to at least go to John.
Well, no, they would have to meet setbacks.
Not
They
meet
wouldn't
the
need a building
setback.
permit, but they would have to comply with setbacks.
At 180, they wouldn't need a.
That's not correct. They're not 10 by 20. They're 8 by 20.
Well, they,
Well, some of them.
Yes.
no, because they can't go more than the way.
oh, that's right. That's that 9 feet to go over the road.
Oh, right,
You
right.
can't go 10.
You're right,
Not
8, 10,
10.
never mind.
So I'd leave it 200 feet, but I'd limit the number. That'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, so that idea of the 1 per acre, I like that. for the-
No,
for
no,
the
2 plus 1 per
No, the
acre.
plus 1 per acre, I like that, because if a farmer has a little lean-to thing he puts out for his animals in his field or something like that, he has a way to get them undercover, so he would have to go to the zoning board to have that extra one to put an animal undercover. But if you have a 2 acre lot, or a 1.86 acre lot or whatever, you can have up to the 2 sheds. You just can't get the third one, but a farmer could.
Yeah.
If it,
So the
Which
my
makes
suggestion
sense,
is
yeah.
limited to two storage units or sheds per property up to 2 acres. One more per acre above 2 acres, or 80,000 square feet, whatever you wanted to
Right,
do.
2 per property
Under 80,000 square feet.
Why don't you just say up to our minimum zone?
Zoning's different in zoning's different in different areas, so.
what, I mean, what's the minimum zoning requirement? I don't,
The minimum lot size requirement, sorry. So if our minimum lot size requirement is 1.88 acres, then you just say, okay, you can have 2 up to the minimum lot size, and then anything above that.
so if they come in with a conservation subdivision and they do a 1 acre lot, that's still the minimum lot size by our zoning, even though
Or 40,000.
it's less than
square feet, yeah.
80,000.
So I think it's better at
Right.
80,000,
It
80,000.
still meets their minimum.
Yeah, but
They-
conservation, you don't want
So
to.
they're allowed 2 sheds on that smaller lot.
HOA is not gonna allow any
80,000
stuff like that.
I think.
They probably won't even
You're
allow
not-
a shed.
You're already not limiting it on like a smaller lot. So you think of like the lake lots.
No, I'm allowing 2.
So 2 by right per lot,
Yeah, I'm just.
and then
saying,
1 additional per acre.
I think we're saying
Yeah.
the same thing.
One per additional over 80,000 square feet.
Yes, I'm just,
Well, 1 additional per acre maybe over that.
I was thinking one additional for every acre over 80,000 square feet is what I was thinking. But if you guys want to propose something else,
makes sense to me.
so it's gonna allow,
80,000 square feet, you're at.
That's the minimum lot size.
Minimum lot. You're at 1.88.
so allow you, every acre you're over 80,000 square feet, or you can say every 40,000 square feet, if you want to do it that way, I don't care.
The only reason I was recommending by referencing it as the lot size requirement is because at that point, if, you know, lot sizes or anything like that ever change, then, you know, whether it grows or shrinks, you stay in.
Yeah, but John's point is, I think, stronger, where conservation lots, you don't want to give them, you know, you want to, if they got 2 on their 40,000 square feet, and you don't want to give them extra, you know.
You're not giving them extra. You're just saying up to whatever the minimum, the standard lot
Yeah,
size.
but why make them go look it up? Just say 80,000 square feet. And we'll change, if we change it there, we'll change it there. And that way it's all one place. It's clear. It's clean. And,
Not a hill. nor-
So would we put that in like a note,
Somebody else. if you're gonna see
like in
it.
the dimensional?
Okay, so
restrictions,
two-
Or just in their
Moving on.
definition?
There you go. Done.
It would have to be in a regulation, not a definition. That's where, I'm not sure where we put it
I don't know where
in.
you.
So where we're gonna put that in zoning? Cause it have to be something in the regulation, not just a definition. Maybe under that dimensional uses there in chapter 3.
The one I gave you, I think I gave a number, didn't I? Wherever, the sheet I gave you, Vanessa,
Right in here.
everywhere that I said a suggestion, I think I gave a
Oh, your
place
reference
to
where it
put
would
it.
go?
Where to put it.
No,
Where's Ron's stuff? So the
no,
That one I did.
limited number of sheds or shipping containers under 200 square feet in all zones except
Is it
commercial
considered
to
a-
2, with an additional 1 allowed per acre for lots above 2 acres.
Yeah, I couldn't find a place to put that.
So that would probably go under Article 4, your minimum standard requirements.
that or like,
So if you did that, you could almost, I'm just talking out loud here, just trying to think. So if you go into that, you got like the stuff for your general residential, neighborhood residential. Where it gives you like your accessory structures, if you have if you do 1 or 2 bedroom, if you do an extra dwelling unit, so you got, let's say, a duplex, you know, it gives you the density requirements on that. So I'm for reference, go to page like 15, 16. So if you put it in, no, that chapter there, that would give you that dimensional requirements for the sheds and the additional sheds. I'm just trying to think, where else would you fit it in this, in the zone?
this would be, yeah, standards for.
Yeah, but that's chapter 4, right? Yeah, that's where I was thinking, that's, you know, for the heck I think of putting it, so. then you would have to list each district to do it because of how it's set up. Wait a minute, at the very beginning, does it say all districts in the very beginning?
So I have a question. Are we gonna put a bunch of work into this, put it before the voters, and there's gonna be this massive fight about like, people are gonna have a kitten when you talk about not allowing them to have their sheds?
That's what I'm thinking.
Which is,
We're gonna get it
I don't know.
passed.
which is fine. But I know a lot of people are pissed off that people have, all kinds of crap in their yards. So we'll let the people decide. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, if-
both
At
sides.
least if they have a shed, they can put their crap in something.
Yeah.
So no one sees it.
A lot of these sheds are pretty.
Secret.
crappy.
Then
It's not
we
like- it's not
deleted
like there's all that
storage.
attractive sheds,
I know.
All these sheds are pretty ugly, man. I mean, I hear you. I think it's a good piece of pushback, but I say put it before the voters and let them see. And that way, if somebody else complains, we let you vote. You said no.
Look
Do
at
you
putting
get
an
a lot of
article for.
complaints about that thing?
Said earlier.
Right. I remember where this came from too. Genesis of this was the thing across from Kayla's.
Yep, that's coming up.
Okay, we've got.
That
rid of-
contract is,
Yeah.
Storage, we got rid of
commercial use.
Restaurant,
He's not allowed to have that anyways as a commercial use, because anything placed or erected on a commercial lot has to comply with site review regulations. So he can't even have one of those without coming in and get site review. So that whole concept of that is not, is that any struct, just like Donna had to come in for her little thing because it was a commercial site. So the only place you can put sheds without getting a building permit and meeting setbacks is on your residential lots anyways.
oh, okay.
But I've heard people complain about.
And you do them for short term. Somebody's build out, rent it
Odd.
out, and they bring it in, drop it, load crap. in.
Yeah, some towns have 180 days. You can have it if you're building your house, destroy.
Where do
your
we have
pool.
that?
No, we don't have it.
No, we don't have it now.
We don't have it, but some towns do.
Well, that's
I think-
coming up as temporary.
Temporary permit.
I think we should, because.
I actually had a guy that's starting to build a house and he come in and got a administrative zoning permit to drop a 160-foot Connex box to put his tools in.
On page 15, we went all over them all except for civic center. Is that a definition you want to add?
Like monster truck stuff.
We don't have terminal trucks.
We always talk about
Dying
like
everywhere.
civic.
Civic center. You like a hockey rink or?
Well, they call them
Monster
police
truck
stations
thing.
and fire stations in this definition of civic center.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call them civic.
We had civic something, did we have something else? Civic? Community, we had community something before, didn't we? Yeah, we did.
Oh, we have community
Community center.
center,
Community center.
No, but we had something else, community.
community care facility? Yeah. Okay, so. Oh, it says may also, community center can be referred to as a convention center or civic center, so. I
Okay.
saw that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Now on page 16. We kind of already talked about the convention center. I don't know if we wanted to add that or not.
500 or more
That's the
people.
500 people. When we were trying to talk about like venues, like what would be more appropriate, and that seems too big of a. I think we all decided that the conference center is kind of. What's gonna be,
Okay, let's go with conference center then.
yeah,
All right.
okay, temporary structure.
Section of permanent foundation.
And this would be the place to put pods and stuff like that.
But what, I'm sorry, odds? you said?
Pods,
Oh, yeah.
stuff they use during construction. I mean, a lot of contractors now leave their trailers on the.
I think you ought to make it clear that they have to be an accessory structure, because I can see someone saying, I'm gonna live in this.
So not any structure, but accessory structure.
Because if you go to our definition on accessory on our uses, accessory structures, they have it here to where,
Well, we have dwelling defined. Wouldn't that fall in a dwelling, John?
well, the dwelling, the new definitions on dwelling, the stuff here, that, because these new definitions, that was something when we were doing the classics and private road, these actually come out of the building code.
Yeah.
Should it just say any non-residential structure? Not on a permanent.
There you go, non-residential. I think that would make it so that,
No longer a dwelling.
wow, I still have the issue because of that 180 days for the recreational use on any lot.
Yep.
So we have people living in sheds, campers, tree houses.
So ship it like the specific time, like no more than,
We have
90
180
days.
days now for, let me finish before you write the 180
oh,
days.
okay.
We have 180 days now for that recreational use that you can have them. How do you regulate the 180 days? You don't go out there every day to make sure they're living there or not living there. And I actually have one place where the guy films a person that comes every day and he sends it to me every year to say, she was there for 197 days and she says, I got my record says I was only there for 170 and I'm just telling you what goes on. It's, it's,
Mm.
so when you do a timeline, if the timeline is that one for that recreational use gives you the use for 180 days. Now, if you can say that it can remain on site for 180 days, then you can determine when it come in and when it went out. And is 180 days reasonable if you're using it for like a construction job site trailer? I think it's more than reasonable, but
No,
it's,
no more than 180
but
days.
it would have to be of like contiguous days or something like that, because how else can you regulate it? That's where that recreational use comes in. But we've had a lot of people that on their lake, they got a camper, they leave it there year round. They go there, even if they go every weekend, the course of the year, and they don't go every weekend, but even if you did, you got 104 days. And if they stay 2 weeks in the summer, you add another 10, you got 114. They're way under the 180. To make them haul it off every time they use it makes no sense. But
Charger.
if you're going to allow something as this one here as a temporary structure for those types of purposes, you probably want to regulate it to contiguous days.
Okay.
I wrote
Well,
that down.
temporary structures, if you said non-residential. So if that puts the campers and stuff in a different category, wouldn't it?
Well, a camper is going to be a vehicle, like, so
Well,
that,
we're
and
just
then if
talking
you got
about
a shed, if it's under 120, if it's under 200 square feet and your temporary structure, you can just say, I put a shed up, I don't have frost protection in the whole bit. I can do it as a shed with an accessory, with an administrative zoning permit. So even though it's kind of meets that definition of a temporary structure, it can be left there permanent.
Well, but your example of where the,
That's like, we've already said that those are permitted by right. They can put 200 square foot sheds.
Yeah, so how is this temporary structure different than allowing that if it's under 200 square feet? That's,
well,
Because I would look at these are designed with the intent of being temporary structures, not the intent.
yeah, I mean, if you get a well supporting it, you got a holding tank, that kind of stuff. To me, if you have living facilities, bathroom facilities in the structure, that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about non-residential, right?
right, but even a non-residential, even a Conex box, someone has under 200 square feet, they can dump it on their property. And if it's in the buffer that just has to be raised off the ground, they're allowed to put it there because it's if you go to that definition that we had, it was what, for storage, incidental,
Yeah, I agree with you, John, but we just limited that to 2, right? So that's taken care of, right? The sheds taken care of.
no, I'm just want to read you the definition because it looks like this comes under that whole thing there. Because the structure.
Well, you're looking for that. I mean, I got a wrinkle. I don't think 180 days is enough for, Bobby, to me, if I'm building a house and I have a storage unit on the property
Yeah.
for my tools and stuff, 180 days ain't enough.
No,
No.
you're gonna come in and request an extension.
You can get an extension, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, if it's under 200 square feet, you could leave it there permanently. See, a thing that's under the 200 square feet, it says A one-story detached accessory structure used for tools, storage, sheds, playhouses, or other similar uses provided the floor area does not exceed 200 square feet. So if you come in with a Conex box and you're using it for storage of tools and sheds or equipment, it says, because it says similar, to me, that meets that definition, unless you
Okay.
change this definition.
So if I'm building a house, I can put a storage unit where I have tools and supplies kept out of the rain and safe. I can put in down the road an iPod for as long as I wanted to put it in. 180 days would be more than enough, you'd imagine, you don't want to do that.
But you're allowed two, so it'd only be the
Right.
third one that you'd be limited on your time limit. And if you're really gonna put three of them there.
Yeah, so I think that's fine.
Okay,
You see,
I'm gonna
that's
back
the-
up. What is the purpose of the temporary structure? That's what I'm saying. What is the purpose? They're already allowed to do it permanently. And we're saying you can have it temporary for a certain amount of time. If you can have it there permanently by this regulation, it becomes a permanent structure. Why is someone gonna say I'm doing a temporary structure and I'm saying you gotta take it out?
Well, let's say let's say I'm not new construction. Let's say I'm existing. I have two sheds already on my property, but now I'm adding a pretty substantial addition to my house. I want to dump the storage unit for some amount of time during the construction period.
Could you solve this by saying your sheds need structural standard? And then your temporary structure would not structural standard.
I think temporary is more of a time thing than a design. I mean, you get some pretty ugly sheds out there already.
You do. What I'm trying to get to is if you start thinking about what defines what we're trying to capture in temporary structure, and it's prefabricated structures for the most part that are used for the purpose of services. Sheds.
Okay, so if you go back to the existing definition we have of the ones that are exempt from setbacks and permits, you could put in there, does not include Conex boxes or something like that. And then you could do your accessory structures as like a Conex box or something. That makes them clear that someone can't dump a Conex box on their property for permanent use of that under 200 square feet, but you would have to change it in this definition under structures.
I'd vote for that.
Well, Conex boxes, but I think I think you gotta allow iPods and things like that.
No, but you could do that as your temporary structures. I'm talking about the
Pods
permanent
is
ones.
temporary.
Because they're gonna, so if you take, right now, what our definition says, a one-story detached accessory structure used as a tool or storage shed, playhouses or similar uses. So that similar uses gets it out there, providing the floor area does not exceed 200 square feet. You could put in parentheses, does not include Conex boxes or something like that, to make it clear that those aren't allowed as a similar use.
Okay,
And then you could have your temporary structures where you allow the Conex box for a timeline.
what page is it?
Okay, so the one that we have that's existing is on page 90. It's in the definition to what's
Okay.
exempt from setbacks and permits.
I think it's a good idea, John.
I agree with that one.
And
Accessory
I'm just
structure.
thinking, I gotta enforce this, so how am I gonna address it? You know, that's that.
Right.
It's got to be.
I gotta be able to, reasonably get there and show people that this is what the rules are.
So what was the wording you were?
So I was just thinking maybe someplace, I'm not sure how to word it exactly, but maybe like at the end of it, put in parentheses, Conex, excluding Conex boxes or something, make it clear that those aren't a similar use. Because right now where it says or similar uses,
Okay,
and I think you kind of want to keep it because of how someone might use like a shed type structure, this,
right. I agree. They're great for temporary, but they were crappy for
And I would-
permanent.
I think I would exclude the iPod things, the iPod storage unit.
Yeah, the pods are usually temporary while you're moving, right?
So I would.
So they should fall into the 180-day thing.
or maybe you could
With an
use, how
extension.
did you describe it?
exclude the
A
Conex.
pre-manufactured steel container or something
Yep.
like that? You could put something like that in there saying that those aren't a similar use, and then
They're not permanent.
then you're not necessarily kind of Conex box or a pod or something like that. You're saying
Yeah, but the pods
pre-manufactured.
aren't always steel, or sometimes
Right.
they have
They
like,
can be like with a canvas.
Yeah.
like a canvas on the south side.
I don't know, I'm not trying to write it. I'm just trying to come up with ideas how to write it.
I think you're close, John. We're just trying to get the final.
Did you get that note?
Because a lot of your sheds now come pre-manufactured, so you just can't say pre-manufactured, because almost everybody's buying a shed, they're hauling in with a truck and dumping on the lot now.
All right.
Almost
thank
no
you.
one builds on site anymore.
Reach
I
ferry.
guess it's too late to even get to
There you
this
go.
Especially on the
discussion.
commercial.
Steve, so I have a.
I know, next meeting, I guess.
All right,
Okay.
are you good, John, enough to work on Vanessa with that?
I suppose we'll try to come up with some kind of wording, and you guys can go along and not go along with it, however you want.
Oh, sure.
So
Okay.
the same thing with accessory structures, did you want to put a timeline on it?
We'll,
Do we want to say?
we'll put the hard stuff to the staff, you know,
Do you want to say the 180 days on the timeline for this, the temporary structures? I mean, is there a timeline
Is it a?
No more than 180 contiguous days.
consecutive?
Consecutive.
so the tools are,
But you can get an
Because
extension,
we've already said. you
like
can have
it
the
takes a
two.
year to build a house.
Well, you come in and you get, if you do it as a permit,
Oh,
are you gonna require a permit? No.
Don't have permits. Yeah. You can't
well, could you attach it to,
have done like temporary structure permit,
We don't have one, but,
but we don't have.
but
one.
even our, the administrative zoning permit was actually created when this rule got changed about allowing sheds in the buffers. That's where that, because if you go to the whole thing about, on this structure here, it talks about that administrative zoning only applies to stuff in the buffer. I've been applying it straight up all the time because it gives me a chance to talk to people, and I go and look, and a lot of times it's like, oh, that there is a wetland, you can't put it there, you know, even though.
We just. That out of there?
No, I'm good here. I'm good here with what we got because
Okay.
everybody goes along with getting. The selectmen agreed that it was prudent to do them for free. And it gives me a chance to go out and talk to people. In the long run, it costs a lot less money than it does to do an enforcement action on the other side afterwards.
well, the 180 days, rather than require approval, you could have them just submit it notification. So,
I mean, you could do it the same way as that administrative zoning, a free permit.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's
you
the
could
way-
do something and that way you document the day that they get their permit and they got 180 days. And then they go over that, they can come back
just
in.
notice you, there's a
But then-
form to fill out and say, I'm notifying code enforcement, I'm putting it in on this date. And that way you would have a record or somebody to record.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, I think we can come up with some kind of simple
Yeah.
form that's done without a fee, just so that we can kind of control it at the same point in time. Because it's really, when you charge a fee, it's for a service provided, and if you're really not giving a service, what are you charging a fee for? I mean, that's.
Sure.
Yeah, here just not even notice of putting it in.
Yeah.
It's
That's a good
permitted.
point.
And we're
And I
not
think
giving you
it's-
notice.
Like, if you have the fee online, so some, or the, like, this is the.
We'll have to establish some kind of permit thing that they can fill out, just so people understand there is a permit for it.
Great, go online, fill it out, submit it, boom, and if they want to come in, see you.
Yeah, a lot of times the administrative zoning permits, they email
I mean, I
to me and I
wouldn't call
email
it-
back.
I wouldn't even
go
call it
look
a
at
permission, I just call it a notice.
It's
In other
kind
words,
of like,
there's no approval required. You just have to give us, you have to submit a form to us saying you
well,
do.
the thing is, I still think we should do it as a permit, because if they come in even with a temporary box, they can't dump it in the middle of a wetland.
Okay.
So
All right, yeah,
if they
yeah,
do a little
yeah.
permit, we can go out and say, yeah, you can put it there for your temporary thing for this number of days. and
Yeah. You can direct
Right.
them so they won't get in trouble.
We'll have to come up with some kind of form thing, but we can probably come up with something. Yeah.
That sounds good.
There you go.
I was at notice until John turned me.
Next,
Number 7 is the class 6 private road definitions that being discussed in the subcommittee. It was suggested to put these definitions as well in zoning. There's 4 of them: dwelling unit, habitable space, and living space, and they're all from the International Residential Code Book.
Now, here's the part that
Oh,
the
I was not
the
laughing.
committee, on the last time we met, decided they wanted to do usable space as a definition and not use these, and we haven't come up with a definition of usable space.
going to be habitable space, which is.
Well, we talked about that, but then if someone did habitable space and they had a walkout basement, they're not calling it, they're doing that, and then they come back later and they want to get it, so that becomes a habitable space when they do it. And see, I think that would be fine, because once you expand that basement into habitable space, you would have to come back in under category 3 of the class 6 and private road. But they're worried that if people did that now and they didn't, they called it non-habitable space, they would do something in the future without not coming back, but sooner or later, it usually catches up with you and you don't pull a permit and but you know, everybody has their own thought process on it. You were there when we, you know.
Okay, so should we?
All this takes place at
So,
7:30.
I mean, as a board, if you guys want to put these in definitions, I think it's fine. These are all out of the residential code.
I mean, we could wait until the subcommittee finalizes, Bill.
Yeah, because I know that's the last thing they wanted to do is usable space is what they were talking about. And I've tried to find all kinds of stuff. I can't find a true definition. We're probably gonna have to make up something.
Okay, so wait.
Basically, what's going in here is when, let's say that someone takes a house and
Great, wait,
lifts it up, puts a full foundation on
wait
it.
for Ron.
Does that trigger the private road, thing?
But it's
So-
not, but it's,
Additional-
because right now it adds volume. But if you didn't, if
Discussion
we called it
topics.
living space and not adding living space, so we
Oh,
kick it under.
short-term
category
rentals.
B,
Then we're
not a category
deleting
B.
volume probably,
I
so.
think we decided we don't have to worry about that.
That's-
One of the
that's-
trigger
that's one of the
different
things
enhancements.
We talked about not doing this, we mentioned short-term housing
That's short-term rentals,
and
like,
then decide
like
no.
Conway's fighting
and
all
then-
this.
That's like touching the third rail.
Yeah, I agree. That's,
Okay,
Talk
no,
about mixed use. But include daycare or other ways to help with daycare within the zoning ordinance. No,
Would fall under the mixed use. right?
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, if TurboCam decided to put a thing right into the building.
We
okay,
talked
yeah.
about turbo tots.
Turbo Tots, you have Turbo Tots?
you should do that.
and what, 50 new residential units above it.
Right.
That would be great.
We
Okay,
talked about sheds already,
What are flag lots?
but flag lots on here. It's the back lots, I guess, is more what we call them.
Yeah, we call them
but-
back lot. It's the same definition. You know, you got
I know there was some just